Everyone, I would like to call the Planning Commission meeting of March 28, 2022 to order. At this time, I would ask that we all stand and pledge allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, this time I'd ask for the roll call.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Ms. Little?
Yes.
Mr. Wooden?
Here.
Mr. Hardy?
Present.
Mr. Behrman?
Here.
Mr. Lunsford?
Here.
Ms. Jenkins?
Here.
Ms. Coggins? He did say he wasn't gonna be here. Ms. Cheek? Here. Mr. Newby?
Here.
Mr. Surry?
Here.
Okay. Next thing on the agenda is the adoption of the meeting agenda. Need a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second that we approve the meeting agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next thing on the agenda is the consent items. The first one is the disposition of the minutes for January 24th, 2022, and the second thing is the disposition of the minutes for February 28th, 2022. If there's any noted corrections. If not, I entertain a motion that we accept the minutes as presented.
I see a correction, and it's the same throughout. It's the spelling of my last name.
Okay.
It's Jenkins, and should be Jenkins. It's on page 2 in the in favor category. All of them.
Okay.
It's also again on page 5. I'm sorry, page 6. This is the in favor category under public hearing closed.
Okay.
Page 7, under the in favor categories. Page 8, also again under the in favor categories.
Okay. Was that in both sets of minutes or just the?
It's also, it's not just in, yeah, it's in some of the February 28th.
Okay.
Not all of them, just on, I think it's only on page 2 in the February 28th meeting. It's in the first in favor category on page 2.
Okay. I entertain a motion that we accept the minutes with the noted corrections.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the consent agenda with the noted corrections.
Second.
Properly moved in second that we accept the consent items with the noted corrections. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Old business, no old business. New business, capital improvement plan, and I think Ms. Rollins is.
Yes. Good evening, Chairman Brock. Good evening, Mrs. Judah Little, Chair of the Surry County Board of Supervisors, and to all the Planning Commission members, and to those who are assembled. It gives me great pleasure this evening to stand before the Planning Commission to present to you, I'm going to say, a draft capital improvement plan for fiscal year 23 through 27, and also the first year, which is defined as the fiscal year 22-23 budget. Now, I can say that it could be a little bit atypical that I'm standing before you doing the presentation, and perhaps maybe next year Mr. Horace Wade, who is our Planning and Community Development Director, probably would be the likable person to present our CIP. But in Surry County, we work as a team and we step up and do what we have to do. And I also want to be able to, on this evening, before we even get started, to thank the Planning Commission for your service. I do know that you are a busy Planning Commission, and I know that the past year or two, you all have been inundated with a lot of things that are coming across Mr. Wade's desk, and you all are doing a very fine job helping him to navigate the waters, and Mr. Wade is doing an excellent job for Surry County, so we do appreciate all that he is doing to assist the Planning Commission, so we again thank you for your service on the Planning Commission. So I won't be before you long. I do not want to get a lot into the various specifics of what's presented here because, again, as I stated, it is a draft document. It is a work in progress. But I do think also this will give us an opportunity to be able to help educate some of you who may be new on the Planning Commission regarding the process that we have gone through this year and talk a little bit about what the process should be going forward when we're trying to engage the Planning Commission in the planning of our CIP needs for Surry County. So I wanted to show the first slide here. It was really funny because I was just taking a glance through some documents today, and I actually had came across the article from one of the newspapers where it shared when Surry County had adopted the new comprehensive plan, and for some reason I can't see this well. Pardon me. And the first thing that I saw was the quote here from our Deputy County Administrator, which is Mr. Harrison, who is not here, but he had said something very pertinent in his quote, and that says that Surry's greatest asset for implementation of the plan is the relationship that exists between boards and commissions and staff. It will take all of us working together collectively and collaboratively to achieve the goals outlined in the 2040 comprehensive plan. So I think that's very important to say, and that is one of the reasons why I stand here before you tonight to make sure that we are engaging you all as a board, as a commission, to be able to provide input to the county as to how you all see things fitting into the 2040 comprehensive plan. So the next slide just speaks to the key themes and the strategic focus, and this is taken from the comprehensive plan. But as you all know, that the key themes of the comp plan, it says to preserve Surry's rural character, preserve Surry's unique character, economic growth, and of course enhancements to the quality of life. And doing so, that focuses on several strategic initiatives, and I will just briefly mention those here. The first is rural placemaking. Rural placemaking, I think, is very important as we plan for specific projects here in Surry County, creating vibrant and authentic places that reflect and celebrate the unique culture, character, and history of the community. Another strategic focus is safe and clean communities, ensuring that our citizens and businesses are safe, healthy, and secure. That pertains to many of the public safety initiatives that are outlined in our capital improvement plan. Good government. Good government is always needed in attracting and retaining qualified staff to be able to carry forth the vision of the community. The next is economic empowerment. Obviously, we are here to address the needs of our communities, and we like to support them based on the projects that are developed in our plans that will benefit the entire community. Economic growth, generating resources necessary to support the services that the community desires, and of course, producing those quality jobs that are needed in the community. Education and engagement. That includes forging partnerships with our educators to keep and develop and attract youth and other citizens so we can have a positive impact on the Surry County community. So the next slide speaks to I'm trying to navigate two things here. There we go. The next slide speaks to the community, speaks to the development process for the CIP. So the departments began to submit their requests to the county during the normal budget process. We do an evaluation, looking at the operating impacts and also try to identify the funding sources as to how those projects would be paid for. Those funding sources can be anything from debt financing to grants and other opportunities, as in addition to local funds that we're dedicating for CIP initiatives. The county administrator has to compile a 5-year CIP, which gets incorporated into the consolidated budget. And the next tab is where you all fall in is Planning Commission review. So this is where we are here tonight. The public hearing that is conducted is for the CIP process is the same time that the county does its public hearing on the total budget. And then, of course, the 1 year, which would be fiscal year 22 to 23, is adopted as the county's capital improvement budget. There are specific categories of the CIP, and those categories are listed here: general government administration, and that typically involves pretty much countywide projects of a general nature, like information technology would be a prime example of a general government project. Community and economic development, I want to add that this category used to encompass parks, recreation, and culture, but we thought it'd be fitting to change it to community and economic development because parks and recreation is a component of developing the community. Facility maintenance. Here in Surry County, you notice that we do have 20 plus facilities that we have to maintain. And we know that a lot of our facilities here in the county are aging facilities. We have 3 schools. We have, of course, this facility. Just to put my statement into context regarding the age of our facilities, this facility alone has 31 HVAC units. And so you can think about how long this building has been here and the fact that we are trying to maintain aging infrastructure. And you'll see that we have a big project like roof replacements on these facilities and others. So a lot of what's encompassed in the CIP tonight is facility maintenance. Public safety, we do net public safety. When you look at the comp plan and when you look at our budget documents and other items, you know that public safety is part of what we do in Surry County to make sure that both our citizens and our businesses public safety needs are met. So we do have a lot of needs as far as public safety, and we try to address those annually. So that is a major category. And of course, education in terms of our school systems is our 5th category. The next slide speaks to, the guiding principles and benefits of the CIP. Now, when we look at what's priority, often we get some projects that are a legal obligation to do or a mandate. I can give you a prime example. With one of our schools, we have a well that has to come out of service according to DEQ requirements. So we know that's a legal requirement that we have to do. So we have to make sure that that priority is, at the top of the list. Of course, there are health concerns, safety and emergency needs that I alluded to earlier. Those guiding principles and development of the CIP, those that produce a positive community impact, and of course have broad community support. And again, that's where you all fit in as well. Prior commitments that are from previous years that go into ensuing years. And of course, in any development of a CIP, you have to look at what our debt financial policies are to make sure that we are in compliance. In terms of the benefits of our CIP, of course, having a CIP helps us to foster a sound and stable financial means to accomplish the projects that we are trying to get accomplished. It can allow us to better coordinate our projects on an annual and a 5-year basis. It provides key knowledge to our stakeholders. Often we do get requests from outside as far as what our capital initiatives are, and it's great that we have the information available for internal and external stakeholders. It ensures the needs of the community are met, and of course it provides for just a logical process for assigning, as I stated, those priorities of specific projects. So, and look back at prior year capital investments. I want to show this information because Again, a lot of what we have to do is to make a determination as to exactly how we are financing a lot of our CIP projects. The projects that are shown here are projects that are largely were done with using some reserves or county fund balance to do these projects. So we tried to be good stewards of the financial resources, and by that was able to accomplish some of these projects. And I'm not going to list them all here. They're here for your information, but again, this is just some prior year capital investments that the county has accomplished. Okay, a look ahead. So planning for future capital investments. So what we will continue to focus on, obviously, is to do a multi-year planning of CIP. We definitely want to consider the results of the comprehensive plan and make sure that we are looking at those themes and concepts that are listed and planning accordingly to what's included there. Obviously, there is a push and pull for resources, and not all needs can be funded in any given year. There are other maintenance facility-related infrastructure repairs that's on a as-needed basis that we have to consider. And I want to bring light to 3 projects that are underway in the county as we speak. And you all may have heard about this, but current year specific projects, we are moving towards a new mobile radio communication system, which has been in the works for quite a few years. Our financial software system replacement, which is a huge project for the county, and we are looking into purchasing another fire truck this year, which was included in the current year's budget. Okay, I know this is hard to read, but this is just a list of CIP projects for budget discussion. Again, this is just not an exhaustive list of projects, and not all of which is listed here is going to be included in any given year, but this is just what we call like a brainstorming concept, in addition to looking at some of what we know are some priorities for the county. Again, when staff meets to kind of talk about the CIP, we list those things that we know have to be done in addition to those things that, you know, may be desired in the county. And from this list, we can kind of pinpoint those things that are, again, priority number 1 versus priority number 2 and so forth. And for others who are looking at these documents can have some general idea about some of the things that are being discussed amongst what we hear in the community, from what the Board of Supervisors may have shared with staff. And again, we're hoping to hear additional comments from the Planning Commission in terms of some projects that relate to the comprehensive plan. We kind of would like to believe that for a lot of these things, and as it relates to the economic development initiatives, that we've kind of picked up on some of those things, and I want to kind of focus on a few of those things on tonight in later slides. So with that stated, I will move along to the major capital improvement project descriptions, and we're going to talk about economic development just a little bit. Okay, so with economic development projects, the first projects listed here is speaks to element 4 of the county's comp plan, which basically stipulates the focus of economic goals to grow and diversify Surry's economy using regional and local assets. So included in the CIP is $300,000 in funding that is set aside to plan for economic development initiatives that are strategically directed to investment in business and industry here in Surry County, and to take advantage of regional opportunities where local funding support may be recommended or required. And just to give you a little bit more on that, sometimes when we are looking at a particular project that may be a regional base, sometimes we may be asked to contribute some dollars to that project. So here is just like a plan set aside for when there is a regional opportunity. We have some money set aside in our budget to be able to say that we have an opportunity to look at that project and have some set aside monies for it. We are looking at $88,230 for downtown development planning. and Mr. Wade can speak a lot on this as well. But basically, comprehensive plan strategies for internal and external investments will be focused on the town of Surry along the Route 31 corridor, requiring the county to work with the town of Surry to develop land use policies, zoning regulations, and investment decisions to promote the town of Surry as a civic commercial activity here in the county. I do know that our Economic Development Department has been actively engaged with the town of Surry as it pertains to a, if I can get the name right, a downtown revitalization plan. Surry County is part of Virginia Gateway region, and that is one of the projects that's coming out of that to help facilitate and how we can bring economic vitality to what we call the center of Surry County, which is the town of Surry. Another project that we're going to mention is the indoor plumbing and derelict and dilapidated structures here in Surry County. And this is something that I know is not new to a lot of you probably, and maybe some in the audience, in terms of how we want to be able to market our county for economic development opportunities. There's a lot of what we call structures that considered to be eyesores, and to be able to have some funding set aside in the county to be able to effectively address that issue. There is opportunities to use some funds from the ARPA, which is the American Rescue Plan Act, to be able to dedicate that towards indoor plumbing, rehab, and those dilapidated structures, removing the blight from the community. And I do know that that was one of the strategic focuses of the Board of Supervisors in terms of some of their discussions on their strategic initiatives. The next slide speaks to elevated water storage at the industrial park. And that cost over 2 years, $1.9 million. So the Surry West Business Park, as you all know, which is the home to Surry County's business, Windsor Mill, there is an existing 150,000-gallon elevated storage tank that is kept filled mainly to meet the needs of Windsor Mill. So there is additional capacity that the county will have to obtain in the event there's new business development in the industrial park. The water capacity there does serve, as you can see, 99.9% of Windsor Mill's needs, so to satisfy their fire suppression needs. So in terms of business expansion in the park, there will need to be a new storage, water storage tank constructed, which will attract businesses to that industrial park. So that speaks to that particular project here. The Water and Sewer Master Plan is another project that was introduced by Economic Development and Community Development staff in terms of how can we further make sure that we are protecting the health and welfare of the citizens here in Surry through order development and expansion of adequate water and sewer systems. The Water and Sewer Master Plan that Surry County did earlier, I think it was back in the, was it the early 80s, Mr. Wade, if you recall? Okay, it's been a while, absolutely. So it's been a long time since the county has done a Water and Sewer Master Plan. So that includes a study to be able to identify the water and sewer needs here in Surry County as well, for upgrading and for growth patterns here in Surry. Okay, so the next slide is speaks to recreation, playground, outdoor recreation improvements. Going through COVID, of course, has taught us a lot, and obviously outdoor activities, quality of life, all of those things that bring enjoyment for individuals to be able to get out and enjoy the great outdoors was the impetus behind putting this in here as a priority item for the county to consider. If you all had the opportunity to look at our Parks and Recreation Center, it is a well-kept facility. Obviously, there are still some improvements that need to be made to it. We are pleased that we was able to do something new, like put the disc golf out there, which a lot of citizens are taking the opportunity to do that. But it does need some additional work in terms of improving of the outdoors. They have restroom facilities in the back. They have shelters. The playground equipment has been outdated for a number of years. The kitchen inside could use some upgrades in terms of it being a commercial kitchen. I can tell you that that facility is utilized just about 365 days a year outside of COVID. If you go there now, you're trying to get a date to use it on the weekends, you will have a hard time getting a date. So with that facility being the only facility in the county whereby we have events and reunions and things of that nature, we wanted to make sure that we're putting some resources to make sure that the citizens are getting a good facility when they're out there for recreational and other activities. Major infrastructure repair, $175,000. As I stated earlier, we have a lot of aging facilities here in the county that we have a very small staff that has to maintain all of our facilities, 20-plus buildings, including the grounds. Excuse me, and oftentimes, even during the course of the year, things come up that you can't plan for. So we want to be able to have funds set aside to be able to address those needs, and some of those needs are listed here. So that is that portion of that project. Okay. County vehicle replacements, roof replacements, solid waste convenience site improvements are all included on this particular slide. I won't go over the necessary vehicles. That's kind of self-explanatory in terms of vehicle replacement due to the mileage needs of the county. The roof replacements, I spoke to that earlier. May have heard some of this in previous meetings whereby this facility in the courthouse does require roof replacements. Anytime that you have the original roof on facilities that are 25 plus years, those things have to be taken care of. Solid waste convenience site improvements, I can tell you when citizens ask what are they getting for their tax dollars, they are using our solid waste convenience centers. And it's incumbent upon us to make sure that those sites are well maintained. And here it includes a $70,000 set aside for improvements in those facilities. If you had the opportunity to visit any one of them recently, you know that we've already implementing some improvements to those sites. But again, there is more need to be done to make sure that those sites are operating efficiently and effectively. The next slide speaks to medical unit. In the 1920 budget, I believe, there was funds included in that budget to purchase a new medic unit. We have in the past looked at the looked at the assets of our both fire and rescue operations, and we do know that it is critical for us to maintain those to update that fleet. So we're including $320,000 in here for a medic unit, which I can say that we're looking for grant funds to help take care of that through one of the state agencies. Pump house tank replacement, that relates to the Parks and Recreation Center. That's just another infrastructure. Make sure that our well systems, that the well water is meeting those standards. And then a fire truck apparatus, the amount of $678,665. In the current year's budget, there was funding set aside to purchase one new vehicle for the Surry Fire Station, and I believe, excuse me, the one that's included here is for the Dendron Fire Station. The National Fire Protection Agency, anytime that you have an engine that's over 25 years old, it should be removed from service, and then anything that's 15 years has to be placed on reserve status. So it is very important in the county to make sure that we are setting aside those funds for public safety needs. And the next couple of slides, I am not going to go through unless you have any specific questions. I tried to outline those things that are major, but basically it outlines the major categories that I introduced on the earlier slides and kind of speaks to the specific projects that we are contemplating for the upcoming budget year, and then, of course, outlining those projects for the next 4 fiscal years. On the last page of this, you do have the projects that were submitted by the school division in terms of the projects for education, and they are listed here as well. So I know that was a quick rundown. And do you have any questions for me based on the information that has been provided?
Any questions from Ms. Rollins?
Question, Mr. Wade sent a document to us, and it's
Yes.
from this document. So which document should we?
Okay, so the, good question. So the earlier document was a draft of the Word document that we're gonna be using to incorporate into the entire budget. So that was a draft, so it was not, had not yet been completed. So some of that same information is included here, but for the purposes of what you all to consider, I would use this one. And then the document that was sent to you before, we're gonna update that and get that to Mr. Wade. Okay? And it's the same information, it's just more introductory type information that speaks to it. But in terms of the projects that are listed here, this is the most current information here, if that helps. Yes.
I'm new to the commission, so what are we, I mean, it's good information. What are we doing as a commission?
Next steps. So, excellent question. So, in terms of, and I had a slide for next steps, and I didn't see it came across, but. Okay, no, that's fine. I want to answer that question now because that's an excellent question. So again, in terms of what the expectation is for the Planning Commission, because we did not do this last year. Prior to you coming on the board and maybe some others, we did come before the Planning Commission and we gave like a brief overview. According to, there's a provision in the state code that says that county administration may come before the Planning Commission and present, a CIP. We want to be able to, again, get any comments that you all have. You all are the living, breathing document of the comp plan. We want to make sure that, any particular projects that you see here are, that specifically relates to the comp plan. Those are the type of things that you all, certainly we would love to have your input on, and just any other comments in general. We understand that a lot of those things are infrastructure that you may not necessarily, be in tune with as far as some of the county projects like the roof replacements and those things, but they are part of the CIP. But those things that really focus on how we are moving forward to get some of the accomplishments of the comp plan is those type of projects that we would like your input on. So the comments that I have received in the past when we did this years ago, Ms. Cheek and others, not necessarily been that many. It has been sometimes just for informational purposes. But again, we just wanted to give you all the opportunity, as we've done a lot here in the county. And just want to give you all the opportunity to be able to chime in on anything you see fit. Okay.
And I may add, one of the things I think in the past that we talked about, it was a need for like a better or upgraded facility for boat launching, like a marina thing. And that might have helped do the driving force to get the marina that we have now.
Okay,
And
absolutely.
it's all based, is a recommendation from us, or things that we kind of would like to see, or the public has communicated with us. But that's just one thing that kind of stands out, whether it had any inflect or from the board, but it was something that we as a committee thought that there was a need for a better marina type thing.
Absolutely.
So that's just one of the things in the past that comes to mind. Any other questions from us?
And I can add, in the perfect world, this particular process will actually be a little bit earlier in the process in terms of Mr. Wade, working with you all in the future to be able to come together in November or December to kind of have a conversation and to be able to, give your ideas ahead so that those things can be, incorporated if needed be, along with the county developing the document as well. But this is typically has been the process outside of us not coming forth with you all last year because of COVID, so.
Mr. Chairman, not a question, but a comment.
Yes.
Ms. Rollins, thank you for your presentation. And I just want to concur with the assessment of the aging infrastructure. It's no secret, everybody knows I'm employed for the school
Yeah,
system.
absolutely.
And we do have some aging infrastructure, and I think you know, as you mentioned, it's time to start looking at our CIP projects and the money that is being spent and make sure we're spending it in a wise way as a commission, as a board, and as citizens. You know, when we spend money for these CIP projects, are we doing what's best for the community? And we just need to take a extended look at that.
And sometimes a deeper dive. Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
Okay.
There are no other questions. Thank you, Ms. Rollins, for the, the staff report on this capital improvement plan. I guess I will ask Mr. Wade, do we need like a resolution sent to the board that we approve this, or?
Another excellent question. So what we have gotten in the past was a letter that will come from Mr. Wade, just says that the Planning Commission heard the report and they had these particular questions, or you have any comments, those can be sent and just say that you received it and, endorse or approve the comp plan with any, not corrections, but any recommendations that you all may have. Okay.
And is there a time limit on that?
I love y'all questions because these were all of my next step the slides that didn't show up. You're fine, but absolutely. So I'm almost scared to give the date, but on April 15th, I'm supposed to present the county administrator's recommended budget to the Board of Supervisors. So I will get with Mr. Wade and we can come up with a by date to have your comments. So I would hope for within the next, maybe 7 to 10 days to have any comments. Okay.
Mr. Brock, we do have a subcommittee that's looking at the comp plan. I don't know if you would like to add that activities.
Right. So what she's saying, we've got a committee to look at our comp plan to make any, additionals. But that would be in the, our recommendations to that part of it would be in the letter that Mr. Wade would. All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Well, thank you all so much for the opportunity.
All right. So the next thing on our agenda is the Mr. Wade.
Okay. Good evening, Planning Commission. Hope this time finds you well this evening. Tonight we have a public hearing with Lapla Solar Llc. It's based on a 150 megawatt large-scale solar facility, 41 combined parcels, totaling approximately a little bit over 2,400 acres. Project area is limited to about 900 acres with 2 substations. This is a map of the parcel or combined parcels. As you can see where the transmission line is coming from north to south. You can kind of see where this particular site here on the south side of Route 10 is where the primary panels will be assembled, and to the north is where the easement to get to the transmission line. And this is a aerial of that same view submitted by the applicant here of area hooking up to the transmission lines north of Route 10 and some of the portions of the panels. And south of Route 10 is the assemblage of panels there as well. There have been a significant number of public meetings for this application since June of 2021. For this particular portion of the application, there have been 2 in the past month. Some of those concerns, as we've seen since June of 2021, were buffering, public concerns of buffering, view shed, and property values, noise, health and safety, environmental health, wildlife, traffic, damage to the roads, and then what kind of community benefits there might be. The applicant would be able to explain some of those and how they mitigate some of those community interests or inputs. The applicants are also proposing through their rezoning case, they would beat the minimum setback from the right-of-way off of Route 10, 40 of 250 feet, 100 feet off of exterior property lines, and 500 feet from residential homes, the actual, from the panels to the actual, the footprint of the house. Additionally, they'd have a minimum buffer of 200 feet from existing vegetation, 100 feet for existing vegetation, and areas where there's no planting that exists, approximately 50 feet. As you note at this time, that there's a complete required process for approval for these types of projects for a solar energy facility. Is a comprehensive plan amendment, a conditional rezoning to M1 or M2, a conditional use permit for a utility service major, and then also a review for compliance for a comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan amendment, the current plan shows this area as agricultural, forests, and conservation recreation. Industrial land use is required to support the utility scale solar project. The conditional rezoning to M1 contains setback requirements, provides buffer standards, limits the allowable uses to agricultural, silvicultural, and then the utility service major. And the application is a precursor for obtaining a conditional use for the utility solar project. And the CUP for this utility solar scale, the project is to comply with their preliminary site plan. The plan that you saw earlier with the aerial drawings on it is a conceptual preliminary site plan. Contains site development conditions for the development. They have submitted conditions, they're in your packet, and it provides additional buffer standards in the conditions. The substantial core determination is a review of the state code for compliance with the comprehensive plan. A request for deferral by the Planning Commission. At this time, I did speak with Ms. Powell, our attorney, Ms. Powell, and she indicated that maybe if you wanted to continue, I think just some questions about that. Maybe we address that a little bit later, of how we address that. Okay, all right. And then so we evaluated based on strengths and weaknesses. The strengths were setbacks and buffers that were proffered were greater than the M1 standards. The project is adjacent to the major thoroughfare and is not in agricultural production. And the industrial use would also expand the tax base in the county. Some of the weaknesses that we explored were that several exterior property lines are near residential use parcels. The project was within 2.1 miles from another solar farm along Route 10, and the project is 1 3/4 mile from the electric transmission line. The applicant did explain their application of why they were that far. Their language that they explained was that they attempted to locate the transmission to attach to the transmission line sooner, but they could not obtain access, and so therefore they were required to go over Route 10. So that was their explanation. I believe they do have that in their packet this time. And so, and at this time we do have the applicant with their presentation as well.
Are there any questions from Mr. Wade before they,
I have a question for you, sir.
Ms. Cheek?
Mr. Wade, the property has, forest on it, but you didn't mention that in a strength or a weakness. You only talk about it's not in agriculture, and, our comp plan talks about preserving agriculture and forestry historic sites, so did staff have any comment about that?
I think it could be seen as both.
could be seen as both.
It could be seen as both. That's the reason why it's not mentioned either.
Can you elaborate on why it would be both?
Sure. Sure. So you have a comprehensive designation for all of lands you have there, being agricultural. Typically, these are kind of areas where solar development is developed in these type of land uses. And so, what you're doing with this whole process, you're essentially going to change your future land use to be industrial. And so the future land use is what you have as, I think you said, we go back to that slide over there, was agricultural and, let me see before we go back here. Yeah, the future says agricultural, forest, and conservation recreation. So, I mean, with the amendment for this type of case, you would be changing that. That is a fact. You would be changing that on the map to be something like that. Is it a? I mean, I think it could be seen as different reasons. I think there'd be different people that would explain different ways and how you get to a pro or a con on that, or strength or weakness on that one. Most of the solar development, they're going to be on land that is currently agricultural or forest. That's typically the fact here, and especially in Surry County. So I don't know if I answered your question, but what you're seeking though, but that's where I am right now. That's the land that you would basically get.
That's all my questions.
I guess to help with me identifying that or understanding that, we're not considering timberland as like prime agricultural land.
So
Or should we?
that was one of the things that I've longstanding is with this whole prime agricultural, Surry County, according to the maps that you have from USDA, like most of the county is prime agricultural land. And that's one of the reasons why we're exploring a new comprehensive plan amendment to actually explore that, because in the comprehensive plan it says not located in prime agricultural land, and if you did that in the county, you would have no projects at all. So I don't think that was the intended wording of the comprehensive plan. Maybe it was, but I don't think that was the intended wording of it. Maybe it was to say that in production, maybe into production. I think that we would explore that in our new comprehensive plan amendment. That may be some discussions that we could have in the future, actually in the near future. And that we'll give you an update on that later on this evening.
Any other questions for Mr. Wade?
Well, just to go back on your comment, Mr. Brock, I mean, in this comp plan, it says agricultural, forested, and natural land that forms the basis. This is important characteristics to preserve. So I guess maybe my point is that we can't just look at agriculture if we're looking at this comp plan, because we have to think about the broader items that they're mentioning. And maybe that should be considered differently than it has been.
And Mr. Wade, do you have any comment? My comment to that is if we've got to make a decision tonight based on the comprehensive plan requirements, that is a consideration for each individual commissioner here. Whether we stick to the comprehensive plan or kind of how you interpret the comprehensive plan.
So if you're asking me from a staff standpoint, me to evaluate based on the comprehensive plan for this project with the comprehensive plan, and evaluate amongst other properties and projects, I do feel as though this project probably has the significant amount of buffers that keeps the character of the district that it is right now of agricultural and forestal. I think it still keeps the character, and what you're looking for in the comprehensive plan is the character. Does it maintain that character? But I think, is that what you're looking for, Ms. Cheek, when you said about that?
I think that's a very good answer. Not necessarily what I'm looking for, but it's a good answer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Wade? If not, at this time, we're here from the Lapla Solar.
Good evening. I'm Scott Foster. I'm a land use attorney with Gentry Lock in Richmond. I live just across the river in Williamsburg. I represent Hexagon Energy and Primergy Solar. I'm excited to introduce Primergy. They're a new face for you all in Surry. Hexagon Energy and Adam Ventre is not a new face. You all have seen and heard from us multiple times. But Catherine with Primergy, Hexagon has partnered with Primergy. Primergy will develop, build, own, and operate this project. So different than so as a point of context, solar and energy storage development is all I do. So Primergy and Hexagon, knowing Primergy at this point in the process that this is going to be your long-term community partner is a special update. Often we're at this point in a project's yet to be sold. It's a bit of a pig and a poke. You don't yet know who's going to be the long-term owner-operator, and that's a big update tonight to introduce Primergy. As I said, this is all I do. I have seen a ton of solar projects designed and permitted. This is the first one that is going to be completely buffered by existing vegetation that I've permitted. It stands out in stark contrast to the ones that you all have permitted in the past, and really anyone that you drive by and see today in Virginia. So really excited about that. Several things. I'll walk you through your review tonight. You're going to do a substantial and accord determination under 15.2.2232. That code section requires that any public utility facilities general or approximate location, character, and extent be submitted to and approved by the Commission as being substantially in accord with the adopted comprehensive plan or a part thereof. In Virginia, substantially in accord has been interpreted to mean largely but not wholly in conformity with the comprehensive plan or a part thereof. Surry, as you all know, is ahead of the curve on actually having solar language in your comprehensive plan. The majority of the jurisdictions I'm in have not yet updated their comprehensive plan to specifically address solar. So not only is this project in general conformity with your broad goals of the plan, it almost completely conforms with your solar-specific regulations, which is really unique. Catherine is going to detail that in her presentation and go through that on a granular level. The rezoning. Your solar ordinance requires that solar in Surry be developed on M1 or M2, so we've submitted a rezoning application. As Horace profiled, this is a conditional rezoning application, so we have disclaimed all other uses except for agricultural, silviculture, and solar. So everything else is out. He also profiled some enhanced setbacks beyond what is contained in your ordinance that we are agreeing to in those proffered rezoning conditions. As a second part to the rezoning application, there's a comprehensive plan map amendment. So when you all grant a rezoning, it has to be in sync with the development plan map in your comprehensive plan. So we need to update that map as a corollary to the rezoning. Last is the conditional use permit. This is where the applicant can commit to terms and conditions above and beyond what is required by the ordinance. I want you all to look at the conditional use permit and the proposed conditional use permit conditions as a living document. What you see before you today, what the applicant has proposed and what they've worked with Horace on, is reflective of a whole lot of community outreach, a whole lot of specific and intentional thinking about how this project is to be developed and operated over time. Catherine's going to profile a number of additional ideas that we have for adding some conditions to the conditional use permit. So we really want this to be tailored to fit the site, fit your all's expectations. It's an exciting thing for you all to be able to weigh in and review those conditional use permit conditions and suggest changes if you so choose. And again, just to reiterate, the buffering and setbacks applicable to this project and the existing land use that it's in existing timber set this project apart from any application you've seen before, any project you've driven by, and I'm excited to introduce Catherine to walk you through our presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foster, and good evening, members of the commission. It's a delight to be before you this evening. My name is Catherine Meyer. I'm the Director of Development for Primergy Solar, and proudly raised in Hampton Roads, so I'm delighted that my role with Primergy has brought me back to my home state. As Mr. Wade detailed, you're somewhat familiar with this project already. It's a 150 megawatt solar facility, which includes 12 private landowners. And of the approximately 2,400 acres included in the subject parcels of the application, only approximately 900 acres of those are within what we call our fenced area, or the project area. The current use of that property is planted pines. And less than 50% of that 900-acre area would actually see panels. The remainder is buffering, resource protection area, wildlife corridors, vegetation, pollinators, you name it. And within that, it's only 0.5% of the total acreage in Surry. I know 900 acres sounds like a lot, but in a county like this one with a lot of space, it's less than 0.5%. And the array is entirely consolidated in the Carsley district. There are absolutely no panels north of Route 10. The only thing north of Route 10 is the transmission line connecting the project parcels south of Route 10 to the existing transmission line to the north. In an effort to determine our accordance with the comprehensive plan, we looked at the plan's solar objective, which reads, while recognizing the benefits of renewable energy and the interests of property owners, Surry County should minimize the impact of utility-scale solar facilities to Surry's natural, agricultural, and cultural resources, as well as the visual impact on Surry's primary transportation routes. And we seek to demonstrate how we meet all 6 of the strategies outlined in that objective. The first of which is that we should avoid and minimize impact to farmland and farmland of statewide significance. Number 2, solar facilities should not be located within residential investment areas. 3, they should be screened from towns' residential investment areas in routes 10 and 31. 4, they should not visually impact scenic and cultural resources. 5, they should be sited as close to existing electric transmission lines as possible. And finally, that Surry County should advocate for more flexible taxing options for solar facilities. Now, starting with strategy 1, that solar facilities should avoid or minimize impact to prime farmland and farmland of statewide significance. At a previous application that was brought before you, I believe in the early part of last year, we did have some panels located on parcels that were in current agricultural use. After receiving the Commission's feedback, we removed the project area from those parcels, and as a result, no project parcels are in active agricultural development. The only parcels that are seeing project area, or what I like to call the array, are in forestry and silviculture. This type of development, as well as solar development and the soil testing requirements, as well as the groundwater testing requirements that are included as a condition of our conditional use permit, ensure that the property and the soil quality are maintained so that if in the future, when the solar facility is complete operating, that the property owner at that time could go back to agriculture or silviculture knowing that the soil can support that activity. 2, solar facilities should not be located within residential investment areas. This project is not located within or near the residential investment areas around the town of Surry and Route 31. It is also not near the Route 31 residential development corridor between Surry and Dendron. And as a result, this project would not impact the residential development goals as outlined in the comprehensive plan whatsoever. Strategy 3, solar facilities should be screened from towns, residential investment areas, and routes 10 and 31. As Mr. Wade detailed, we have committed to various setbacks, of which are detailed here as well as in your packet. We have committed to a 500-foot minimum setback from all residences, a 250-foot minimum setback from all roads, and finally, a 100-foot minimum setback from any neighboring properties. And in addition, I wanted to give some detail on our residential neighbors. I'll show this in the next map, but the project parcel that is the main support of the array is very large, and it's kind of obscurely shaped. And as a result, it touches many more residential properties than would be typical of a property this size. And I think gives the outsized perspective that we're affecting more residences than we actually are, just given how odd the shape is. And we wanted to quantify this a bit. So the nearest residence to the project area is 532 feet. As my colleague always likes to say, it's over 2 football fields. It's quite far. And imagine those 2 football fields are all trees. It would be almost impossible for you to see through 2 football fields of native vegetation. And of the parcels as near the project, they're an average of over a 1/4 mile from the project area. And between them and the array, in almost all cases, are trees and native vegetation. And you can see this a bit on the map as well. In the blue is our latest design of the array or the project area. These areas are also fenced individually, which is quite unique. It allows for wildlife corridors to be maintained for deer and other wildlife to continue to move throughout the parcel freely. I myself do most of my hunting on a property adjacent to a solar facility and actually a wind farm too. I have no trouble. The only reason I ever have trouble hunting is if I just am not making a good shot that day. You can also see how oddly the parcel is shaped there. It has almost a tail, you can say, in the northwestern part, which touches numerous residential properties. But the array itself in blue is quite far from those properties. And in most cases, as I mentioned, over a 1/4 mile away. You can see in green as well, that's a mix of native vegetation, riparian areas, wetlands, which will see no impact and have multiple layers of protection at the state level. And as I mentioned on the residences, we took some iterations to figure out the best way to display this. The array, again, is that gray area, and the little black dots on the outside of the property are all of the residences nearby. We added a 500-foot buffer, those little green circles, just trying to give you a visual of how far away these arrays are. It's tough to tell when you look at these big macro maps, but it's a significant distance. And the way that we've designed it ensures that the visual impact is reduced and that our project neighbors can continue to enjoy their property with the rural character and the agricultural character that they've enjoyed. And to help compare this to your existing projects, the existing solar farms that have come before you and are in the county had a minimum road setback of about 75 feet. Their average setback from the road is also 75 feet. The nearest residence to the array is 200 feet. Their nearest property boundary is 50 feet. They have almost 4¼ mile of road frontage where you can actually view the facility from major county roads. And they also had local road impacts where there was 5 construction entrances on local Surry County roads. And they had tax revenue per 150 megawatts to draw that comparison between theirs and our facility of about $9.3 million. So let's compare this to our facility. Our minimum road setback is 250 feet, almost 3 times. Our average setback from the road in practice with the array that I just showed you is over 500 feet, almost, was that 6.5 times farther? The nearest residence is 532 feet away. Our nearest property boundary is 100 feet away. The road frontage is reduced to less than a mile at 0.8 miles. And we would have 0 construction entrances on local county roads to reduce traffic impacts to local citizens. And finally, the tax revenue that we are offering totals in excess of $19 million, over double what the existing facility made possible for Surry County. On strategy 4, solar facilities should not visually impact scenic and cultural resources. There are absolutely no known cultural resources within or near the solar facility. There are no National Register of Historic Places listings within 1.9 miles. And to confirm this, a historic review has been completed and is enclosed in the Commission's packet. And finally, there are additional layers of control at the state level for us to do additional surveys, additional cultural resource reviews to ensure that if anything is discovered, that is appropriately preserved, and that we have additional controls at the state level to ensure that be the case now and into the future and throughout construction and operations. Now, strategy 5. Solar facilities should be sited as close to existing electric transmission lines as possible. In our initial application to this board, we had proposed panels north of 10, There was panels all the way up to the transmission line in accordance with this strategy. However, we received community feedback that they preferred panels be south of 10 to reduce impacts to their neighborhoods and their use of their property. And we knew that this would come with trade-offs. If we moved panels south of 10, it meant we would have to have a transmission line. Transmission lines are never best practice in the solar industry because they're a very high cost. We want to avoid it too. But the feedback was that that was very much the community's preference. And this move south of 10 also allowed us the opportunity to offer a completely natively buffered project. So it was a trade-off, but I think it was one that was worth it. And would not have been possible, this completely buffered project, if we had elected to maintain our position adjacent to the line. And knowing that we needed to connect the project south of Route 10 to the existing line, we needed to seek what we call a gen-tie corridor, a transmission line easement. So I wanted to kind of walk you through our process of how we came to the route that we have now. So on the map you see before you, our project boundary or the project area is on the south in blue. The existing line is there in that yellow and black dash. And so we first asked, okay, so who is already here? And that the easiest path would have been the most direct, which would have been right from that southern parcel straight up to the line in a northeasterly direction. But this entire gray parcel is owned by one person. And that person had other plans for their property and was not willing to grant us an easement. Easements and agreements with our company are wholly voluntary in nature. We are not a utility company. We do not have the powers of eminent domain. So since that person declined to work with us, we could not put an easement on their property and had to look in other directions. Our two options were to go west or east. To the east was the town of Spring Grove, and as you can see in the map, there are lots of black dots, which means lots of residences, lots of private homes. It wasn't the optimal way for us to go to preserve that rural character, to ensure that we were minimizing impacts to residences. So we went to the west, and we're fortunate enough to enter into voluntary easement agreements in the corridor shown in orange, which is what you see in the project designs that have been included in your packet. Again, these agreements were wholly voluntary. They were through tracts that were in active timberland, and our impact of the route will be preserved to approximately a 100-foot corridor, and the remainder of the property use will be maintained either in timber or the other existing use that's already there. And I wanted to give you an idea of what the proximity to residences would be, because that's really, I think, a hallmark of our project, including our transmission line. And so I added a 1,000-foot buffer to our line, which is this area that you see here in red. And within that area, there are only 3 residences in a 1 3/4 mile corridor, with an average of 620 feet away from the proposed line, the least of which is 332 feet, a significant distance, or as you would call it, almost 2 football fields. And as a result, we feel very strongly that we meet the strategy of the solar facility should be sited as close to existing transmission lines as possible, while also meeting the remaining 5 strategies with the goal of maintaining that rural character. And finally, strategy 6, Surry County should advocate for flexible local taxing options for solar facilities. And Mr. Wade did a great job of detailing some of these options, and I'm going to go through each one and talk about how we've sought to achieve each. So first and most simply is real estate property tax. We will be paying tax on the underlying real estate where the property or where the project is sited. Number 2 is M&T tax. M&T tax, of course, is the minimum tax required by state code for projects like these, utility projects like these. It's similar to personal property tax in that it's assessed on the value of the equipment, but it depreciates over time at a pretty fast clip, to where once you get to approximately year 20, the payments are relatively paltry, only about $25,000 a year. And since it depreciates so heavily over time, and in my opinion, especially by year 20 at that $25,000 a year payment, it's just not enough value for the county. And my solar industry colleagues agreed and advocated for a new option for compensation to the county that allows for higher, fixed, and escalating payments over time. And that's called the revenue share provision. I have further details on that in our next slide. But the final item that I believe Mr. Foster highlighted is that we can also use the proposed siting agreement to offer additional community benefits and payments above and beyond taxes or revenue share. And I'm going to detail some ways that we've offered those benefits as well. So first and foremost, we have revenue share, property tax, and M&T tax. So the revenue share provision, which I detailed as that higher escalating payment, is calculated as $1,400 per megawatt in year one. This amount escalates by 10% every 5 years, as defined by state statute. And that megawatt percentage, that $1,400 per megawatt, is based on what's called nameplate capacity of the facility, or what the label on the solar panel is, so 150 megawatts. So you would multiply that $1,400 amount, or whatever it would be when it escalates, by 150, regardless of production. Production of the facility does not affect payment whatsoever. Rain or shine, cloudy or sunny, the contributions to the county will remain wholly unchanged because those payments are solely based on the nameplate capacity of the facility. And by proposing this revenue share provision, in lieu of and in addition to the M&T tax, we are offering the county an additional $9 million in contributions over the life of the project. And to make sure that in the case where M&T tax for some reason exceeds whatever that revenue share amount is, and whether it be year 1 or year 20, we have included a condition in our siting agreement where we will pay the greater of M&T tax or revenue share each year. So whichever is greater, that is what we will be paid for the county. And I think this is important to highlight because facilities like these, I think it's very likely that we'll see in year 20, maybe even year 25, that new technology will have come up and it'll be an appropriate time to swap out panels, get something new in there. And it's possible that at that time, the M&T tax amount will exceed the revenue share in that year. And this is a mechanism where we can ensure that if the facility gets new panels, are shiny and bright, that the county is also seeing a restart in the M&T tax calculation to make sure you're capturing that value now and into the future. And by doing this, we are ensuring that the county is enjoying high, consistent, predictable contributions for the entire life of the facility, which we estimate to be at least 30 years, if not 40 or 50. And I think a good baseline for you all is the nuclear plant in Surry County. It's the example, I think, of the energy facility that's contributed the most. And it's interesting to compare solar and other facilities because the way that energy projects collect revenue is not based on the megawatt of the facility or the nameplate capacity. It's based on how much power the facility produces. And different kinds of facilities produce different amounts of power. So I wanted to compare the Surry nuclear facility and the Lapla solar plant based on our contributions per megawatt hour created, which is how you measure energy production at a facility, is that megawatt hour. So at Surry Nuclear, per year, according to the EIA, Surry Nuclear made 13.17 million megawatt hours in 2021. And according to Surry County's 2021 forecasted budget, they were planned to contribute $13.82 million in taxes to Surry County, a considerable sum. But when you calculate the megawatt hours to tax, Surry Nuclear is paying $1.05 per megawatt hour produced. Now let's compare this to Lapla Solar. Lapla will be producing approximately 328,500 megawatt hours of power per year in year 1. The tax that we project will be paid on average is $407,000 per year using that chart that I showed you earlier. And so if you take those together, we will be paying $1.24 per megawatt hour produced, almost 18% more revenue than Surry Nuclear based on our energy production. In addition to the revenue share, we will also have the opportunity to propose additional benefits in our siting agreement. And I've listed a few of those here. This is again where that higher of provision for revenue share is included, that we will always pay the higher of M&T tax or revenue share each year. We've also offered a $250,000 additional voluntary payment in year 1 to the county. We have also offered a $125,000 payment to Surry schools to do some technological advancements for the middle schoolers. We've also included $2.4 million over the life of the project to fund a power bill reduction program for eligible Spring Grove residents. We created the power bill reduction program as an answer to the fundamental question of how are we benefiting the neighbors of this project. The county gets quite a benefit from hosting facilities like this, but the neighbors don't always see the same type of benefit, and this is our answer to that, and we're very excited about it. The Power Bill Reduction Program is believed to be the first of its kind in the nation, where a solar facility is assisting in reducing the power bills of the citizens that neighbor it. I'm really, really excited about it. It'd be really cool if we can do it. And Prince George Electric Co-op recently entered into discussions with us where we are in ongoing coordination to understand the future of this project with them. And finally, we've also offered funding for a project liaison position for Surry County, for a Surry County resident. The project liaison would act as a trusted local point of contact to ensure that we are continuing to meet all of these strategies as outlined and are maintaining our permit obligations included in the conditional use permit. As I've detailed, we are successfully employing all 6 strategies to meet Surry County's objectives to capture the value of solar while protecting Surry's resources. We have avoided and minimized impact to farmland. We are not located in residential investment areas. We are fully screened from towns, residential investment areas, and Route 10 and 31, as well as residences. Solar facilities will not impact scenic or cultural resources. The solar facility has been sited as close to existing electric transmission lines as possible. And finally, we have advocated for flexible local taxing options to Surry County for our facilities. And we understand how important compliance with these strategies are, and we sought community feedback on how best they felt we should meet them. And as Mr. Wade detailed, we've had numerous community meetings, 10 in total. We've been before this board now 4 times, and you've seen 4 different revisions of our application. I hope that this speaks to our commitment to evolve and improve this project over time. And throughout these 14 public meetings, we've received feedback which has helped us do that. We have included some detail on that feedback and how we are going to address it, and I wanted to highlight a few of interest to me. So first and foremost, the use and maintenance of county roads. Within our conditional use permit conditions, we're required to create a construction traffic management plan in collaboration with VDOT and the county. This most importantly includes a requirement to improve and repair county roads as needed prior to and following construction. 2, the use and maintenance of private lanes. Our substation will be accessed by Forest Lane, which is a private lane. We are in active discussions with the group that maintains that road currently and have requested the incorporation of a condition in our conditional use permit that will require that we enter into a maintenance agreement with them prior to commencement of construction to ensure that they have written documentation of our commitment to assist in the maintenance of that road for the duration of the project. 3, replacement vegetation and bonding. A prior question I've heard at earlier meetings is whether or not we are going to replace vegetation that dies or becomes diseased over time. There is a requirement for us to do that. We also have included a bond or a financial instrument to ensure that if for some reason we are not upholding that commitment, there is money for the county to draw on to replace those vegetations as needed. I also have heard a question before on what evergreens are you going to use at the project, and I wanted to answer that for you. They are typically what's called a thuja green giant. So if anyone would like to look that up, they're quite beautiful. They're very large evergreens. They're kind of cone-shaped. I actually think my mom might have one in her front yard. So feel free to look into that. We also have questions about how wildlife is incorporated, ecological areas. So I'm going to touch on ecological areas first. As a part of our state level permit, we have to do thorough and extensive threatened and endangered species and ecological area surveys on this property. We have done all the desktop work for this facility and are actively working to begin the surveys as well. The desktop review showed no threatened or endangered species on the property, no ecological cores of what they're called significance. And in addition, the property does have some wetland areas, and some they have resource protection areas or RPAs. The array is not near any of those wetlands and is also required to set back an additional 100 feet from those areas, which has been included in the array design. We will continue to prioritize the preservation of the ecological areas, threatened and endangered species, wildlife and habitat on the property. And in the map I detailed earlier, you also saw those wildlife corridors. That's very unique. We know how important wildlife is here in Surry County to maintain that agricultural and rural character, and wanted to ensure that any hunting that takes place nearby would not be affected. And we've included those ecological corridors, those wildlife corridors, to allow for those species to continue moving freely throughout the site. We've gotten questions on decommissioning and restoration. There are multiple ways that we've included protections for the county to ensure that the facility is decommissioned and restored appropriately. First and foremost, we have an agreement with our private landowners to ensure that when we're complete operating the facility, we're required to restore and remove our facilities from the property within 12 months. We also have a decommissioning requirement within our conditional use permit. We also have a decommissioning bond requirement, a financial instrument to ensure that if we are not upholding our commitment to the county, there's money for you all and the landowner to draw on to do that for us. And as a final protection, before we would construct this facility, we would enter into what's called a power purchase agreement. It is a fixed price, long-term, binding power purchase agreement for between 15 and 20 years that would ensure that this project would seed revenue for almost 2 decades. There is very limited scenarios in which a project would be decommissioned prior to that time, and it's my belief that at the end of that 20-year period, it is likely that we will continue our energy transition to renewables, and that this project will see another power purchase agreement for another 2 decades. We're starting to see older wind and solar facilities do this now. They're getting re-signed up with new power purchase agreements or being repowered with new panels so that they are priced competitively once more. I think that's likely to happen here as well. I've also gotten questions on the disposal of panels. And I talked extensively, this was a new thing for me, so I talked extensively with my operations construction team about how they approach this. So on the construction side, at the end of construction, if there are leftover panels, if there are broken panels, it is, as my COO put it, it's like leaving your old car in your front yard. You can do it, but it's probably not smart. So it's best to tow that out of there. It's best to remove them. It's usually not a good act to leave your leftover panels on the property. And so one thing that we've suggested to include in the conditional use permit is that if there are unused, not to be used panels or broken panels, that there be a requirement of approximately 180 days for those panels to be removed from the site. Again, that would be within our permit conditions. We want to ensure that this site is maintained in an aesthetically pleasing way, and we are not leaving what is effectively our waste on the property inappropriately. And once construction is complete and operations have commenced, if there's a time when a panel is broken, that would also be the case. And then finally, once we're done with the facility, I think it's most likely from the discussions I've had with solar panel disposal and recycling experts that these panels at about 20 years would actually see reuse, refurbishment, and redeployment to the secondary market. There are innumerable places that I was not earlier aware of where they want these older US-based panels like South America and the Caribbean to assist them in energy independence. They have a lot of issues with power related to an unstable grid and natural resources issues, as well as hurricanes. So solar panels are very common there, and most of the solar panels that we're seeing removed in the US market are actually going to those places to be reused, because after 20 years of operations, panels actually maintain almost 90% of their ability to produce power as they did in year 1. So they're still very usable, and they're good to be used again. If they do need to be disposed of, if they're broken or just no longer working, they would be disposed of per federal guidelines. And finally, what is our relationship with Dominion? And is there really no capacity on this line? I get that question a lot. We have absolutely no relationship with Dominion other than they own the line that we're connecting into. We have an interconnection agreement with PJM, which is the oversight board for Dominion. They oversee our interconnection process through a tri-party agreement, which will include Dominion Energy as our transmission owner. The only money that passes hands between Primergy Solar and Dominion Energy is reimbursement for their installation of facilities to connect our facility to their line. Other than that, we have no financial relationship. They will not be what we call the off-taker or power purchaser for this project. And as it pertains to line capacity, That interconnection agreement that I went through is it's been 5 years since we first put that application in. And it's taken that long over many stages of review and what's called 4 different retools or reassessments of our design to ensure that there is space, we're properly compensating Dominion to do the upgrades necessary for our facility, and that we have the ability to inject our power into perpetuity. There is certainly space. We have made space for ourselves. And to ensure our project continues to uphold and is bound by these standards, objectives, and strategies, we've proposed a multitude of conditions within our permit application, which include that construction traffic management plan, county road maintenance commitment, screening requirements, a bond, setback requirements, a decommissioning bond, and we've further proposed, or would like to propose, a private lane maintenance agreement requirement, soil testing annually, a requirement to do waste removal within 180 days, emergency services training, and finally, that local project liaison to ensure that we have somebody who can walk the property regularly, alert us, and to address concerns related to wildlife, monitor our compliance to the siting agreement and permit conditions, and communicate with the county and project owner as issues arise and need addressing. And these were detailed quite well by Mr. Wade, so I won't read through them, but we have also included these requirements on setbacks and limited use within our rezoning conditions as well. And in addition to these, Primergy Solar has an internal commitment to upholding our values. Here on the screen, these are all my colleagues, my good friends. And our values as a company are environmental stewardship, thoughtful solutions, diversity, equity, inclusion, and access, considerate collaboration, and results and deliverability of our commitments to you. With these values in mind, this project has been cited and custom designed to reflect all the lessons that have been learned through our solar development in Surry County, and making sure that we incorporate our internal commitments to you, our internal commitments to ensure that we are giving you our best and brightest and setting a benchmark for development in this county. And through the combination of location, character, the strategies, the community benefits, immense tax revenue, compliance with each of the 6 comprehensive plan strategies, we hope that we have demonstrated that we are not only meeting but exceeding the objectives of Surry County's comprehensive plan and the requirements of your zoning ordinance. And we respectfully and humbly request that you find the project to be substantially in accord with the Surry County Comprehensive Plan, and that you recommend approval to the Board of Supervisors of the Comprehensive Plan map amendment, the rezoning request, and the conditional use permit. Thank you all. I appreciate your time very much.
Any questions? If hearing none, I thank you for your presentation. At this time, I would open a public hearing. And I would ask that anybody that wants to speak for or against, come forward, state your name and district, and you got 3 minutes. We don't have many people in the guests, but
Evening, I'm Mary Herring, and I live in the Claremont District, and I also live on Forest Lane. I am not a proponent of solar power. I've seen solar power as something that's kind of a shell game with money. I was very concerned before I got here about the economic impact to our power bills for those of us who don't qualify for special consideration. I'm greatly concerned about the environmental impact. I have grown up in a small town environment, moved away, married to military, and just have recently come from Stafford County, where I can tell you a number of mistakes have been made in every level of development in that county, and slow and conservative analyzing of how you use the land and how you use the land forever is incredibly important. You don't want to, I'm much relieved. I came here tonight and I'm really relieved to see that the You know, the comprehensive plan was well presented. It was very understandable, reasonable. I look forward to reading it. I'm very new to the county as of December. I have not had the time with my other leadership responsibilities and travel to look at everything the way I'd like to. On Forest Lane, we are not interested, those of us who've discussed this are not interested in marring the skyline or having power lines go over our road. And one of the reasons is that whether it's reasonable or not to have this view, the view is that you see all these power lines driving under these power lines is a big turnoff for property value. I don't want to do anything that damages my property value. I also don't want to do anything that damages the property value of other people who live elsewhere in the county. This is a huge, huge project. And you know, even if it seems to return more money per unit of revenue, it does not produce the revenue over a long period of time that other elements do. There's nothing we can do about, you know, about the current situation, for example, with the nuclear power plant that is, you know, is growing in age, et cetera. There are people who are pro-solar power, and they have really good intentions and motives for that, and I don't want to denigrate any of that. I just don't see solar power as a valuable tool to really give us enough diversification of our resources to generate power, because it doesn't generate power past single digits. Now, this is a plan, I'll be perfectly honest with you, that I've never heard a plan like this before, because I feel like the company has listened to the complaints that I am aware of from the individuals who are impacted from this. So I don't want to say that there's no movement at all in a good direction. I can agree, I'm not a proponent of this, I can agree though with those detractors on this, that there are elements of historical, cultural, and environmental importance that seem to be, I know they were addressed, especially north of 10 where I live, but they are also, I don't know, I just recognize language, especially after living 12 years in Stafford County and being very active there in the local advocation of property rights up there. That I just because something's not an active use, for example, the farm, the farmland out along our route is not planted. It was planted when we got here, and they mowed it down and they didn't replant it. So I thought, what is going on there? Well, if you don't plant it, I guess it's not an active use. So,
3 minutes is up.
okay, thank you.
We'll
Well,
pass.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else?
Good afternoon, Planning Commission. My name is Albert Shaw from Springs Road District. I'm opposed to the solar farm. It's right in the center of a community, and I feel like they can find some other place to put that solar farm beside in the middle of a community. We have five businesses, research in about 2 stores, and it's just all the offering that they're giving us to make this happen. All that sounds good, but think about the community that they're putting in. I feel like if you're gonna pay part of my light bill because I'm in that area, I'm not concerned about my light bill being paid. I'm concerned about everybody in Surry County light bill being paid, you know? And I feel like if they can put all that money they talking about putting out, go a little further. Pay everybody in Surry County light bill. Don't pay a part of my light bill. Pay all of it for 40 years. I just want to, I just can't sit there and not say nothing. I got petition that was sent to the planning and the board, and I'm hoping that do make a difference in that community. Thank you.
My name is Marvin Drew. I'm from the Spring Grove District also. And I went to school, and according to what they told me, trees produce oxygen. And so if they cut down that many trees, that leaves me in an area where the conditions of my oxygen have been changed. And so it's like living in a city. You got a lot of asphalt. It increases the heat. And based on what they're planning to do to Spring Grove, it's going to lift the level of our heat and the temperature, because the trees are a buffer as it creates a condition where it pulls the energy in, okay? And this is going to pull energy in, but still these shields are creating heat. And so I'm against it. All right, thank you.
Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Mabel Wilkins. I also live in the Spring Grove area. Been living there all my life. I run a family daycare home in Spring Grove as well. I am opposed of the solar farm as well. My biggest concern, I know they said they addressed the wildlife, but I think you addressed it to the fact of hunting. But no one ever really addressed the fact of what's crossing across our properties. I recently went out and built a fence, because I've been talking about that thing. Build a fence on my property because I'm afraid of bear. I'm afraid of cougars. I'm afraid of bobcats. I don't want my babies. They're not from me, but they're in my possession. They're in my care. I would have a horrible time to think that something would happen to my children. So yes, I do oppose the solar farm, I do, because I'm not ready to think about what all that could come behind it. It sounds like they said the finances sound wonderful and everything, but like my other residents said, if you can pay my whole entire light bill, if you can go out there and cover my fence that I had to purchase, all of those things, not just for today, but for the future, then maybe I think I still wouldn't go for it, because I don't know what's going to happen in the future. So yes, I still oppose. Sorry, I do oppose it. And I did write a letter at the beginning when this first came up in 2020. And I'm like, are we still on the same thing? Apparently it looks like the residents of Spring Grove do not want this. We have been saying from 2021, 2020, 2022, we don't want this. I personally do not want this. There's enough going on already. Go to another community, go to another county, not in the middle of Spring Grove. Because if I go down 10, I go down 40, I go down 611, you're in the middle of Spring Grove. Find another place. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, board members, my name is Bailey, McKinley Bailey. I live on the west side of the project that's being considered. From my evaluation of that project, it's benign. I don't see how it could adversely affect anything. However, the country is in need of those types of projects because of climate warming. Thank you.
Any other residents, comments?
I really thought your presentation was pretty good. And I haven't been up on the solar panels. I didn't agree with it when they came before, and now I have to live with them. Every time I go out to Route 10, every time I go to Surry, the only way that I don't have to put up with them is going down Cabin Point Road. They're ugly. They've moved the wildlife. The construction that lasted about 2 years was totally terrible because we got ran off the road. The roads which are not good to begin with, were completely torn up, and this is what we still live with. So I'm looking at this board and I'm going, you've made a mistake to begin with, because I don't benefit from it, I just have to live around it. My electric bill hasn't changed one bit. In fact, it's gone up. My tax base has gone up to the tune of 25%. So I would like to be okay with it, but I'm a futurist, and I liked your questions. When you are fencing in an area, that deer does not have the ability to move. They're captured. And the bears and the wildlife, I'm like you. I'm afraid of it. I live in Guilford Heights. The deer and bears they've come into our community, and you know, that's a little scary to me because they've been pushed by these previous solar panels that I wish that we didn't have. And then two, what would happen if your company went under? Then all of that, to me, is the only thing that we would have to fall back on is the bond that you mentioned, which didn't actually say a money amount, and these panels will have to be destroyed eventually. And I know you feel like you're going to take care of that, but that's really not a guarantee to me 20 years down the road, not with what I've seen over the past couple of years. So I am opposed to it. Thank you.
Your name?
Lynetta Davis.
And you're in the Guilford?
I'm in Guilford Heights,
Okay,
which is Spring Grove.
okay.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
I'm Sandra Jennings, and I live in the same neighborhood as Lynetta Davis does, Guilford Heights. And I came tonight, I already had my mind made up, and you all almost persuaded me. However, I cannot count the times I have been run off the road by the solar trucks and the big equipment trucks. And you practically have to go in the ditch and stop and let them get by. They have absolutely destroyed the roads, and their idea of repair is ridiculous. But my main point is, you all keep saying that trees are not agriculture. Let's hope you don't have no trees, because you wouldn't have any houses, you wouldn't have your buildings. It is agriculture. And the other point is, again, they've made it before, is the wildlife is being destroyed. We're seeing all kinds of bear, fox, coyote, on, and they're being displaced, and they're coming into the neighborhood. I mean, we don't have any recourse. What I moved here for was the country experience. I've been here 25 years. And this would just destroy Spring Grove. We're reeling now because of the solar farms we already have. And they didn't leave buffers. And they haven't repaired the roads. So I'm against it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Demetrius Jones, Carsley District. Just wanted to say that I am against the solar project, but there are two things that two individuals said and that was posted up there about the upkeep of the roads. I do want to say that I do drive the school bus, and I come through Claremont. And so with that being said, Swans Point and Beaver Dam Road is undrivable. You all have come through there. You have practically ran me off the road. Your trucks come through there in the morning. They come through there in the evening. They have torn up Swans Point Road, and they have torn up Beaver Dam Road. And you all have not contributed anything to the county for upkeep of those roads. The county has not done anything to keep those two roads up. From Swans Point Church, from that intersection, in that curve where the old dump used to be, from Beaver Dam going all the way to Holly Bush, you all have torn up the roads. And they're undrivable for a school bus, so you know what they are for a car. So if you all, I mean, the deal is practically all done already, so I think you all gonna go on with your project anyway. But uphold what you say. If you're gonna come in and you're gonna tear up the roads, then fix them up so that the county and the taxpayers will have drivable roads. The roads in the county are already terrible anyway, so we don't need anybody else coming in and helping us turn them up. So if you're gonna come in and do the project and you're gonna present all this money, then the county and you all should come back and fix up the roads like you're supposed to so they can be drivable for the citizens and the taxpayers of Surry County and whoever else come through. Thank you.
Planning Commission members. I'm Brenda Drew from the Spring Grove District, and I'd just like to say that we love our community, our forest, and if you all can keep that in mind as you vote to preserve our beautiful Spring Grove and our forest, our timbers. Thank you.
I'd just like to say, well, first of all, my name is Dylan Jones. I'm a resident and property owner in Spring Grove and Causland. I'm opposed to the solar farms. Surry is a beautiful place. Everybody that lives here and is from here, we know what Surry is. We know what we have. I've been fortunate enough to live a lot of different places outside of Surry. None compare. And when I go places, I stand and proudly say where I'm from, describe what we have, like so many other places do not. That tract of land, I'm very familiar with. I used to ride horses through it, four-wheelers, all types of stuff. I have property right there, where on one edge, along 40, where it is. That's a rich piece of land. Anybody that knows this area knows that triangle. It's basically a triangle, 40, 10, 6, 11, all right? It's a lot of farms, a lot of wildlife, and I'm even curious to, with all the solar farms, I'm curious to see the impact of wildlife feeding on crops in the area as we reduce habitat. I think that is something to think about. What I do want to say in addition to that before I close is, I love to ride the back roads to Surry on my motorcycle. It's one of my stress relievers. Surry looks like a space station, and it needs to come to a stop. It's not worth it. I see the figures, they're very attractive. Think long term. I encourage you to think long term. Again, I'm opposed. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak? If no one else like to speak, I'll close the public hearing. And this time, I would ask that, do we have any comments or questions from the staff? I mean, not staff, but the commission?
Ms. Brock, I'm
Yes.
not sure what some of the stuff I've read through. At one time, they were proposing the part where the transmission line was gonna go would stay agriculture. If that could be confirmed on what we're changing and not changing to when it comes to the
So the application has not changed, so that, I think it depends on what the board does with the, proposed zoning ordinance amendment. So they still have before the, it has not made its way to the board of supervisors yet, but they still would like to go through, if the text amendment to the zoning ordinance is approved by the board, the areas that are north of, Route 10 would be only, applied for, only the areas south of Route 10 would be rezoned M1, and the areas north would just be a conditional use permit up to the transmission line. So that is still the case for this project, but that will only happen if the board approved the text amendment. So they basically have said they prefer the element of rezoning south of 10, and then conditional use permit for all the areas, including north of 10. I believe that to be correct. And so they still prefer that method, but if the board sees fit that they do not want to go with the text amendment, they choose option B of rezoning everything.
That's the Board of Supervisors.
Yeah, correct.
This commission, the solar ordinance says that you'll zone to the point of connection.
At this time, yes.
I just want to make sure I understood.
And until that ordinance is changed, yes.
I'll give you, would you like a little feedback on why we proposed that? So, rezoning that area of the transmission line was of particular sensitivity to that neighborhood where the Gentile line will go. Industrial scares people, and we tried to explain the conditional zoning process where we were disclaiming all those heavier industrial uses. We put that forward as an alternative so that we could kind of take the edge off the Gentile line and not require that rezoning for that area, really as a concession or another option. But we're going to go with whatever you're all on the board's pleasure is on that issue.
I have another question about the conditional use permit. When it references our solar ordinance, that'll be in compliance and, will it be whatever ordinance is in effect when this is signed? Or, because I know we're looking at our ordinance and our documents may change over time, so I just didn't know how this
So if it's
references it.
So what page are you looking at right now? You're looking at the conditions?
I'm looking at the CUP.
Yes, the conditions are basically its own ordinance, so you go by, with the conditions that are applied, it goes by that project. So if they're saying it's in compliance with the solar energy, that might be a question for Ms. Powell. Kind of ask if the ordinance has changed over time, and the conditional use permit says it will comply with the solar energy ordinance, does it also mean?
Whatever's in effect at the time, is that what it means?
Yeah, I think it depends on how it's worded. I'm trying to find where that is, listed, but,
Like paragraph 4, on this page 45 of this 7.4 proposed. I'm using this version that Mr. Wade gave.
yes, so I think it would be what is in effect unless we say, as amended. And I think that, Mr. Foster has something to add to that, but that would be my position.
Thank you.
She's correct. It would be frozen in time as to the ordinance on the date the CUP was approved, unless it's said as amended, in which case, if you change your ordinance, we'd have to come back and amend site plans and whatnot. Well, I don't know that we could agree to any future conditional use permit change, say hypothetically down the road you have to have a 1,000-foot buffer. We can't move our project or shrink it at that point. We need to know what our development terms are on the day we approve it. So if you have additional provisions, I guess the place to be in this part of the discussion would be to address those in the permit condition themselves. So.
But, Mr. Sheik, aren't you asking, like, if we were to update our ordinance tomorrow?
Correct.
And this wasn't, approved by then do you go by what's here, or?
What's the ordinance in effect on the day the CUP is approved? So if you were to approve a new ordinance tomorrow, then that's what we would have to comply with in the CUP.
Not future, once it's signed.
Once it's signed, you're frozen, correct?
Speaking to that
Sure.
effect, I'm sure y'all are familiar with the House Bill 206. That's
Correct.
on the governor's desk as of tonight.
Correct.
Like a lot of people in this room, it's coming to solar far as not just agricultural farmland, but also taking our timberland
Correct.
into effect far as something we don't want to touch. I'm one of them. There's a lot of people in this county that make our living off of that timberland.
Sure.
It's 900-acre project, but it's 2,500 acres total.
Correct.
That's an awful lot of land.
Right, and the remaining acreage outside the 900 it has to be preserved in the capacity it's in today, as depicted in the
Right.
concept
So
plan.
We're also saying this project is got natural buffer, which the other mess, which I say is a mess, as timber grows, you can see through it.
Correct.
25 years from now, people that might not see the panels from their backyard, they're gonna see them.
Correct.
Because I have a feeling, I know our logging crew wouldn't go in there and cut that little bit.
Right.
So, what's a buffer right now might not be a buffer.
Right, and I have to go back and look at the exact language of the conditions, but that's certainly something we can think about as it relates to the ability to see through the buffer. And as to 206, House Bill 206, this project would be grandfathered because it's a 2024 grandfather clause.
Yeah, I know it's a 2024.
So we're outside of that. But I understand where you're coming from on the quantifying the
Right.
environmental and financial impact on ag and timber. Yep.
I've got a question for the applicant. How do you have 0 construction entrances?
I had that question too.
So we dabbled on that language for a while. So the way that the slide reads, and forgive me, I don't have it in front of me, but it says local road impact. So what we meant by that is secondary non-state-owned highway or state routes. So none of the Surry County local secondary, farm roads, for lack of a better phrase, would have any construction entrances on them, which differed significantly from the prior project that had numerous construction entrances and immense traffic on those secondary roads, which caused the disruption that gentleman earlier detailed. We would be avoiding all of those by putting any construction entrances on state highways only and coordinating closely with the county and VDOT to permit those entrances. And the way that we've designed our construction entrance as well is it's an easement corridor in the southeasterly part of the project, so the trucks will be able to turn onto the property, park on the property, not waiting on the state highway, to ensure that traffic continues to flow over time. This was a big lesson learned from the prior project in Surry County that we wanted to make sure that we captured in our project plans and avoided in the future. And I'm glad that gentleman brought it up too, because I think I detailed pretty thoroughly about that road use agreement that we'll need to have, that highway plan that ensures that there is an obligation in our permit that we both improve prior to construction for our use, maintain during construction, and then repair following construction and throughout operations. We concur. We want the roads here to be usable and safe for everyone.
When does the liaison start?
They would start during construction.
So that person will be available.
Indeed. Yeah. We understand construction is very impactful to the local community, and I think it's important that that person be in place during that process. Yes, sir.
Another question. you talked about your applicant with, or application with PJM. Has that been approved?
It's in its final stages, yes.
So, but it has not been approved?
I think approved is the word that's tripping me up. Their results are final. And then once we accept their results, they, what's called tender and generation interconnection agreement to us, which we will then negotiate and enter into. If we elect to enter into it, it is fully binding. Once they've presented that to us, it is what it is. They can't rescind their results. If we continue, if we elect to continue moving forward in the process, we will get our agreement. Oh, if you're familiar with that at all, there's a big transmission process in PJM right now. We are not in the transition cluster, it's called. We predate that, and we are expecting to have our final generator interconnection agreement this summer.
Okay.
My
Yes, sir.
question was, in reference to your power line, when you cross 10, I don't think I've heard what kind of line are you using? Are you using poles? Are you going to use steel structures, or just what?
That's a great question. We are using steel monopoles, they're called. They're, I always do this, it's about this, that's how wide the pole is. And they're anywhere between 50 and 80 foot tall, depending on where the trees are. You want to clear that to make sure that the lines don't sway. And then they're able to be spaced because they have a foundation to them relatively far. So you don't have as many poles like you would, like those little wood distribution lines. They're able to span distances of almost 1/8 of a mile, which very much reduces your surface impact and makes sure that those sight lines that were referenced earlier are maintained as best as possible.
Okay. How many lines can be attached to a given pole?
Typically, it's 3 is best practice.
It's 3.
3 circuits.
Okay. Now, my question is, let's suppose I go to West Surry, way above you.
Yep.
I put in a solar farm, and I get a right-of-way, and I pull it down to join into your property.
Okay.
Can I then have use of your solar, if we agree, can I then tie into your line to go to the transmission line to sell my energy?
So the question is, if another project was built nearby, could they request to put their line on our poles and then go to the substation if they wanted to?
Right.
Hypothetically, they could, I think, because those are called shared use facility agreements. They're typically used between phases of a project. It's very atypical, if not wholly unlikely, that a private company like mine would grant a competitor use of their lines. Getting these easements is very, very difficult and costly. Building the lines is very difficult and costly. I've never seen a situation in my 10-year career where that has been something that was done, but to your point, could be. They would need to get all the land rights. They would need to get a permit from this body. They would also need to get a financial agreement with us. And finally, they would need to get the interconnection rights to our substation as well.
Is that something that, because you control the Gentile,
We-
that you all would be 100% in control of?
Yes.
Could it potentially agree not to do?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great point. We own that Gentile. We do not need to share. So if that's something that this body would like to limit, we're able to do that.
Okay, well, that's the question I have, because what I see is what you have is actually opening up the county. And you would make it such that anybody, any place could, and if you're granted your request, could tie in, get rights, and do their own line. And the reason I say that is because your company will have set a precedence. So anywhere in the county, if I want to get one, and they said, no, you can't have it. I said, wait a minute, let me get Lapla, and I can show you where you've already done this. So the county is entirely opened when you grant such a thing, that it would not only be for your benefit, but look what it's doing to your whole county. You've set up Surry County to be a total solar panel farm anywhere that they want to put it.
I feel that we've clarified this a bit.
Sure. So the conditional zoning process, you are absolutely in control. So you are able to look at a specific application, its design, its features, et cetera, and say, is this or is this not a good use of this land? Is it in conformity with our comp plan? When you make that determination as to that specific project, you aren't setting a precedent that you can't go, that you can't deviate from in the future. So say some future solar developer comes along and says, hey, I'd like to have a project that's got a 2-mile gen tie line. There is no legal basis for them to look at this project and say, you have to give me that because you gave it to them. It's not how it works. Now, you as a person, you may feel a social bond to say, hey, I did it for them, I need to do it for these other folks. But as to legal precedent, that is not the case. You are not setting, you're not legally binding yourself to that type of future decision, if that's your concern.
So you're telling me that if I want to do this, you've been granted it.
Yep.
And I want to do the same thing in a similar area, that if I come here and they said, no, it doesn't meet the requirement, I said, okay, I want to go to the board. I go to the board, my lawyer says, look, this is what we got.
Right.
This is where we stand. Now, how can you argue your disallowance to me?
Right.
Because you've already done it.
Right, right.
But that's what I'm saying, that you're setting something up for someone else to sit there and look at it and say, yes.
Daniel, if you'd like to, I mean, only if you want to.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. It's a good question, and oh, thank you. That will work. All right. There we go. Okay. Good evening. It's a good question. And if I understand correctly, your concern is if you approve or if the commission approves this project, or I guess really any solar project, that then the commission or the board of supervisors is setting a precedent for future applications that you would have to approve it. And so if that is your question, like I said, I do understand that, but rezonings and conditional use permits by definition are applications to be considered on a case-by-case basis. And so if you were to approve this project or any other project, and another project came in that was very similar, I can understand where it would be a little harder to not approve the next project because they're very similar, but there is no requirement that the commission approve a future project because they approved one project. It is to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. Every project should be evaluated on its own merits. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, I think you answered the question, but
okay.
I still think on an argumentative basis.
Yes.
With good counsel like this gentleman, we're gonna win this battle.
Yes, sir, and it's a very good point. Nothing prevents a future applicant or a lawyer from bringing that point up, but that is, and I completely understand what you're saying, but the position is that it is to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis to take into account zoning principles.
We don't want to, as a board, start a situation where people will come in with that thought stuck in the back of their mind. You know, if you come in there, you know you got to abide by whatever is in the manual and whatever our comprehensive plan says. But if it doesn't say anything about whether you can put a power line from your grids to put it to VEPCO. It doesn't say anything about that. So what would stop a person wanting to do that?
You make a good point. You make a good point. But all I'm saying is, from a legal review perspective, I completely agree with Danielle, and this is what we do every day. So that's my advice to my client. That's my take to you. And you can listen to Danielle.
Depends on the guy in the black robe what he says.
Well, and I think you raised a good point too. You know, I agree with you. We don't want this line as much as you all don't. And I think, as I hope I detailed, we tried to balance as best we could the request from neighbors to make sure it was south of 10 and screened properly, had this thick vegetation, would not be able to be seen from Spring Grove residents, would not, would maintain that feel, would maintain the look of the community. And we would challenge any future project that has a Gentile line like ours to provide the same value statement on all the other 5 strategies, the revenue share provision, the community commitments that we are, and that you would look at those merits in that project at that time. But we hope that we gave you the, you know, we're balancing out. We understand the Gentile's not optimal, we agree, and that we've offered, you know, the other benefits that we could to offset that.
Could you put something in your, whatever you have, to say that if that line is approved, if it is approved, that project is approved, that is limited to those, to that one project? That it cannot be used for anything else? Nobody can come in, attach to it, or whatever?
I can do that. I will do that.
Well, I'm just asking, can it? You
No,
know,
if this permit were approved, I think that is a fantastic suggestion, and we are happy to include that in the conditions. I think it's reasonable. I think it would avoid concerns like this one in the future that would limit development on this line in particular, and ensure that the character of this line is maintained as we hope that it will be.
That's all.
Moving around. The comment, I guess, that I have leading up to all of this boils back to our comprehensive plan, and is as strong or as weak as it is, I was part of doing that comprehensive plan several years ago, and we had public comment meetings. We had it took a while to get it. We started out with a group of citizens of Surry, not just the planning commission. I was on the planning commission and was one of them, and everything that we talked about, everybody talked about, was the rural nature of Surry County, and it was an agricultural community and a forestry community, and that's what we wanted to keep it. Now, times have changed, but our comprehensive plan has not changed, you know, and we wrote in the comprehensive plan that these solar panels, when we did the solar panel ordinance, that these projects would be placed within proximity of the transmission lines. Well, is 1.75 miles proximity. Even though that's the best you can do or the best that you can come up with, I somewhat understand that, but that's not within proximity in my thinking of the comprehensive plan, and that's what this body has, you know, the means to go on. I mean, that's what we're here for. That's why we got the rules and regulations. So, you know, until that's changed, I almost feel like we have, our hands are tied in what we do. This is probably one of the best solar projects that we have. You offer a lot, but if I'm looking at the comprehensive plan, that's one of the main governing things that, you know, dictates where we put these things at. The state says we got to do it. We get to choose where we do it and how we do it. That's the way.
Yes, Mr. Brock. Yeah, one of the elements, the thing that's of concern that we talked about this evening was about where the transmission lines. So that section that we talked about earlier was, I read verbatim from the comprehensive plan. Solar facilities shall be sited as close to existing transmission lines as possible. I think that's up for interpretation. I don't know exactly what that means as far as if you're saying, it has to be right on the parcel line, or if it has to be, you know, you try to get easements as much as possible and you end up 2 miles away from the transmission line. I think that's the reason why, as staff, we did recommend having to go and have a relook at the comprehensive plan, because there are certain things that we're talking about today that we need to reevaluate. But right now, the way it's seen is at this point, you know, do you agree with that they have sited the project as close to the transmission line, as close as possible. I think that's what the comprehensive plan states right now. I don't know exactly. I think it's each individual planning commissioner can interpret that on their own merits about what that means. But
Well, and my interpretation of that is then, that gives us some type of, not restriction, but of where we can put these things at. So it's like Mr. Lumph's saying, the guy, a half a mile down the road wants to do the same thing, or not, another group comes in, wants to do it, then, they don't have, it's still no closer.
I'm not disagreeing.
You know what I'm saying? So
I'm not
somewhere along the line, on this board, we're looking at what the laws are. Once it gets past us, then, or what the rules are or recommendations are, not laws, but that's my whole thing is, if between us and the Board of Supervisors want to rewrite the solar panel, and that's what it's coming to, we need to put that language in there, or take that language out within reasonable proximity. We have within reasonable proximity of historical sites. We know where that's at. So, I mean, we got to rewrite these things, but when we wrote it for the rural character of the county. And, and if we need to change it, that's what we need to change. But right now, the wording don't say that. And that's my opinion.
Okay.
So,
if we are looking at reasonable proximity, and we've had how many, this is the third one or the fourth one? I lose count because sometimes half of it is one
I think
place.
it's the fourth public meeting that this group.
No, not them. I'm talking solar
project.
Yeah,
Okay.
solar projects.
Okay.
This is the fourth one or third one?
It's the fourth.
Okay, this is the fourth approved one.
Or just
So,
project before.
yeah. So if you're gonna look at making a determination and you got something that's vague, you said reasonable proximity to you could be a mile, to him could be 2 miles, might be 500 yards. Where have the other three been?
Their interconnection has been right adjacent to the site, or going through the site.
Because we could possibly end up with these things being 5 miles from the transmission line. The way the comprehensive plan proximity, the word proximity.
Well, it doesn't say proximity. It says solar facilities shall be sited as close to the existing transmission lines as possible.
Okay.
That's what it says.
Yeah. And we're looking at what, in about 2 miles?
It's almost.
Is that
It's
close?
almost. I think it's a mile and 3/4. But
Mile and 3/4, is that close proximity? That's just, just a thought.
I think that's for you
Yeah.
to look at with their application. Is did they achieve that? I think that's up to you all to decide. Did they achieve that based on their application?
I have one other question you said you were using steel poles, to transmit your electricity, your current from your solar sites to the transmission line.
Yes, sir.
And I think you said that you're using direct current, am I right? That's what's going through your lines?
Adam is
From
better
this-
at the DC-AC ratio
Yeah.
stuff. It depends on the project, so he can speak to this.
Yeah, the Gentile line will be AC current.
So you will convert your solar panels from DC to AC before it hits the line?
That's right. When Horace had referenced the 2 substations for the project,
Uh-huh.
one is on site and that has the equipment to take all of the DC current that's generated, turn it into AC, and step that voltage up. Then that AC voltage at the AC power at the higher voltage then travels across that Gentile line and then enters into what we call a switch yard, which is just equipment that allows us to put that power onto the grid there. So we're matching the current on the existing transmission line with ours.
are your lines crossing other rural electrification lines?
Yeah, there are PGEC distribution lines that run along Route 10, and our lines will be built over top of those. So they'll go over those distribution lines and over Route 10.
Okay, and also going all the way up, I think you cross a Cabin Point Road too, right?
Same with Cabin Point Road, that's right.
Okay.
Yep.
Is there any danger in the wind transmitting into the lines because of the type of storms we have now?
Yeah.
If one of those lines were to break at the point of the sag, and that sag was over up there, say on Cabin Point Road, if it falls on another line, whose responsibility is it first to fix the line? Now, we have Prince George. They get there and your line is laying on top of their line that's laying on the ground.
That's a great question. So if the line that you're speaking of, that transmission line, is damaged, then that means our facility is down and we're no longer producing power and we are losing money. As a business, that's not in our best interest. So we would immediately dispatch a crew to repair that at our cost, and then any damage that was done to Prince George's line would also be fixed at our cost because it was our line. I think that's something I can speak to on the importance of that project liaison too. We will have somebody local who'll be able to kind of go out, monitor the situation 24/7, and then our operations and maintenance team also have someone on staff 24/7, 365 that will be available to address this issue in real time.
I think kind of leading up to what you're asking though is, your line goes down, hits Prince George. Does Prince George got to wait till you get there to fix it?
No, I don't think that especially if it's an issue with safety. If Prince George dispatches a crew to reconnect everything and get it to a safe place, we would have no issue with them doing that. If that required compensation to them or coordination with them, they would have our number for our dispatch center as a local utility. That's very standard for projects like these, and it's something that we would be able to address very quickly.
Georgia Dispatch Center is going to be where?
Likely it'll be in California, which is where my headquarters is.
It'll be in Chillicothe.
And the reason for that is we have projects coast to coast, so you have to decide where you're most,
You've got to get some local contractor to come and put, like Pike or somebody like that.
Yep.
To maybe put that back up, or you have an agreement with Prince George.
Yep.
Or Dominion to put it back up.
Yep. Very typical and standard, something we're prepared for.
Okay.
Similar to Dominion's lines that cross PGEC lines all across the county.
Right.
Yep.
Maybe I missed it during your presentation, but your PPA would be with Prince George Electric?
It would not be. Our power purchase agreement will be with a large private company that I cannot name, but all of you are probably aware of. We'll be able to make that public very soon. We're in their final negotiations. But most importantly, it is not Dominion Energy and would not have any part of any increase in your power bills or rate base. It is with a private third-party business who would be using our electricity to power, their various facilities and meet their renewable energy goals.
Because that's the only thing I have not heard during the presentation is where would the electricity be sold to? That has not come before us yet.
And that's it. That's the answer, is it'll be a third-party business. And this is kind of an interesting, I could probably go on longer than I want to, but there's two parts of selling power. There's the unit of electricity you make and the actual electrons. The unit will be sold to that third-party company, but the actual electrons that we make are used at the point of closest need on the grid. So those electrons will likely be used by this region first.
Once they get on the grid, you can't control them.
Exactly. They just fly out of there. Yep.
One last suggestion.
Of course.
If I could make this.
Of course.
The solar panels, I guess they're gonna still keep coming. I don't see anybody stopping them. They're gonna keep coming. But what I'd like to see is why bring just power panels, solar panels and grids. If you came in and you made your presentation to this board and you says, I want to put up 1,000-acre solar panel, and you said, I want to run a line, whatever. And in addition to that, I already have talked to Amazon. They're gonna put a warehouse out here that's gonna employ 30,000 people. Now you are preserving your community. You're giving your young people a chance. I mean, they ride by, my sons or whatever ride by and look at them. Now, what kind of a job am I going to get out of this solar panel? Nothing but a light bill. But if you brought more than one thing, I mean, when you come in and talk to somebody, you know, you just don't just say, all right, this is electricity, this is all I got to offer. I mean, but if you come in and says, now, this is a rural county. They want to grow, they want to maintain. We're gonna bring in our request for solar panels, and we're in conjunction and talking with, just like you do with the contractor, you're gonna have fix your lines. We've talked with people. It might not have to do 30,000. It could do 1,000. But in a rural community like this, you'd make a substantial difference. Versus, okay, everybody's here. It's solar panels or nothing. That's your choice. But this is what I would like to make as a recommendation. You don't have to respond to it, but that's just my little.
No, I'd like to. I think that's a fantastic suggestion. It's one that has been, I think, raised by a member of your community as well. And I think you've hit on a fun, an interesting point where, all I can bring is electricity, and there's a little bit of truth to that, right? Like that is my business. But I have an interesting kind of case study so I live in Kansas City now. I moved there for love. It is what it is. I had to leave Virginia. That's all right. We're at peace. He's very nice and cute. It's okay. But what happened recently is the local utility Kansas City is called Evergy. They made it a priority to ensure that they had renewable power close to the Kansas City metro area, because the hope was that they would be able to attract your Amazons, Facebooks, Googles of the world, because those companies only site data centers and warehouses near renewable plants because they need local renewable electricity to meet their goals. And so what happened is Evergy purchased, I think, approximately 500 megawatts of renewable power from projects in and around the Kansas City metro about 2 years ago. And guess what just got announced last week? A huge Facebook data center out about 45 minutes to an hour outside of Kansas City, which is a similar size to Richmond. So while I cannot bring Amazon to the table to promise you a data center, what I do think the incorporation of renewables in Surry County, as well as your adjacent county, does do is it creates an opportunity where businesses like those, which I think are going to continue to increase over time, see this area as a renewable corridor where they know that they can site projects and get that renewable capacity that they've committed to their customers and to their shareholders. And that's been demonstrated by Kansas City amongst other towns and cities around the U.S.
But the difference would be if you brought them and they stood beside you.
I love
said,
it.
yes,
I know.
this is what we're gonna do. Yeah. You're telling me it's fine.
No, I'm right there with you.
But the other side of that is you're putting your project here and could be selling your power to California.
We could be. I guess when you speak to California,
or somewhere, we don't even have to go to California. Let's go to Mississippi somewhere, Louisiana or somewhere like that.
Do you mean like a utility in Mississippi, for instance?
No,
or do you
one
mean
of
a
these
business?
facilities. Amazon, I think, has one in D.C. And that's already been proved. So those people, they're going around where population is so they can get the workers there. You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
So
and I know a little bit more about this than I'd like to admit, because I sold a project to Amazon in Kansas a few years ago.
Right.
So the way that Amazon does their business, and Facebook is very similar, Google is very similar to this, is they pride themselves on having projects very nearby, and they must be within the same interconnection system where their facility is located. So for instance, in PJM, where we are now, that would limit them to a project within Virginia, Delaware, Maryland, or parts of Pennsylvania. They would have to find some sort of renewable project in there to be able to keep it in the same market. So if they wanted a warehouse in Mississippi, they would need to go to CERC, which is the Southern Energy Regulatory Council, to buy power through them. If they wanted to go to California, they'd have to actually get a project in California because they isolate their grid into CalISO. Same thing with Texas.
Well, are we doing that here, or the PGM? That's who you've got to get certified through.
Yep.
So are that power staying within their area then?
Yes. So Amazon has to buy power for a facility located in PJM's territory from a project in PJM. Okay. And same thing with their facility in Kansas. That's why they bought it from Evergy within SPP, which is Kansas's area's oversight board, Southwest Power Pool, they had to buy projects within that power market. So there is a great question in the sense of like, could this power go to Delaware? I suppose the unit of electricity could, hypothetically. But Amazon and Facebook, same thing. They all buy their electricity in amalgam to meet a company-wide goal. So it would kind of be allocated as they saw fit, but it'd be going to the same Amazon power purchasing entity. Same thing with Facebook or Google. Yeah, very cool question. Power markets, I could geek out about power markets way longer than I want to admit, so thank you for bearing with me.
Well, we could probably keep on asking questions. Our goal is land use.
Yeah.
So.
It is, yes. Were there any other questions pertaining to land use then, Mr. Brock?
How close is this to Spring Grove? When you talked about when you weren't close to the town of Surry and this investment area that we've called out. Then when you, so apply that same thought to that community, which we heard from people today.
Yeah. I would estimate it somewhere around 3/4 to a full mile from Spring Grove. It's farther than you'd think. So if they sought to have, a residential corridor, residential development, there would be ample ability to do that on the existing road frontage or nearby.
So did you say a mile?
I believe it's approximately a mile, yes.
Right. Well, my driveway is about 1/4 of a mile from my house, so. A mile really isn't that far for this community.
It's true.
It's all in how you look at it.
I know. It's so subjective. I can get you, we're happy to get you, we're happy to get you more proximate figures. It's not something I know offhand. But in hearing the general, priorities of the board and that of the community, our intent with the way that we've created this project and ensure that there are robust buffers, if there were to be development at any point in the project nearby, whether it being Spring Grove or otherwise, it would not be visible. And the intent is that it would not in any way affect or degrade the enjoyment of that community, and it would continue to be maintained as it is today. My hope is that they wouldn't even notice it's there. That's my goal. And if they do, they can call their project liaison and we'll get it rectified.
It's a mile from the intersection of 40 and 10.
Okay.
To the array or to the boundary?
To the array.
To the array. Okay.
Along Mr. Lunsford's, I guess, last comment, there's no opportunity for the county to have any partnership with the unnamed power purchaser, is it?
It's something that we can certainly chat with them about after the deal is completed, but we would not be able to promise that as a condition of our permit. Will I facilitate conversations? Absolutely. We are committed to be a long-term partner of Surry County. We hope that our different contributions and conditions have shown that. And if the least I can do is call up our partners at that third-party business and ask them to give this some consideration, it's the least we could do.
I don't want to speak for Primergy or for Catherine, but I think there are other potential interesting opportunities, economic development opportunities that the project could help with, even if it's not a direct partnership with a large entity like that.
The CIP projects were very cool.
CIP projects, potentially, and then there's also, because we move such a substantial part of the project south, a good area of land is just for that 100-foot right-of-way. So there could be an opportunity to explore economic development or other types of opportunities, sort of partnering between the county and the project to put that land to use in a more productive, in a sort of economic development or other kind of way. So don't want to offer that without Catherine's blessing, but
you kind of just did.
But I did. Just throw it out into the universe.
No, it's a great point. Because of the amount of the size of the acreage with the 2,400 acre parcel and only using 900 of it, in our eyes, that creates an opportunity to preserve 1,500 acres as is, but that also reserves 1,500 acres for future collaborations on use. At this point, the zoning amendment as listed would, limit that to utility, civiculture and agriculture, but certainly if there was a project that the county wanted to pursue in conversations with us in the future, we would welcome those conversations.
Initiated by the county, not by you.
I'm not sure what the county would need or want as it pertains to economic development. So I think we would look to the county to let us know what they would seek to do with our project property, and we would discuss that with you at that time. I wouldn't venture to guess what the county would want or prioritize.
Scary thing about that is the community.
That's why I said it will be initiated by the county and not by you primarily.
Correct, correct.
Y'all don't mind, I'd like to put a fine point on your proximity question, because it's a legitimate one. The comp plan says solar facilities should be sited as close to existing transmission lines as possible. And you brought up your other projects and the fact that they interconnect on site. I think your other projects provide a really good comparison for what may happen if you require projects to interconnect on site or to interconnect on really close to the site. I'm reading y'all, so forgive me if I'm incorrect, but you don't love how those projects look. If you allow yourself flexibility on length of gen tie, you can get to a project that looks like this, that is completely screened by existing vegetation. So proximity and having a goal of close proximity does have a trade-off. And I think your existing projects and their aesthetics are a good example of that. So I know you're looking at updating your comp plan. That's a consideration that I would want to make is, hey, what's the trade-off to saying this thing has to be right by the transmission line, because it's really going to limit your ability to select a great site like this one that nobody's going to see.
Any other questions for anybody? Mr. Wade, I would ask that, you forgot, what's the next thing we gotta do here?
Staff recommendation.
Yes.
I made a couple of comments here in the staff report about regarding the conditional use permit application. I did notice some comments here from Mr. Lunsford as well, that's possibly tying in some additional conditions, but I did make some notes myself. One of the things I think the current conditions do not address right now is setbacks for inverters and substations. I think we're looking at inverters being about 300 feet and substations be about 500 feet from exterior property lines. And also I did discuss, I think there are several of you at the meeting that we had for the zoning subcommittee meeting that we met with the applicant. We talked about at some point them talking with VDOT about the crossings over Colonial Trail and Cabin Point Road. They did talk with VDOT. I also talked with VDOT after they spoke with them. There was a concern about the right-of-way crossings being overhead. VDOT would prefer those crossings to be under the road, bored underneath the road. So that's one of the considerations that I believe that this application should have. It should be bored underneath the road. And VDOT gave considerable reasons why it should be bored underneath the road. They would prefer not to have to have any work done overhead over the actual road itself. So that's one of the considerations that VDOT would like us to do if they did approve it. And I don't know if they would approve it or not if the application came before them, before crossing above the road, but they would prefer a bored road. Another element was compliance regarding violations of conditions of the ordinances. That needs to be a condition added on in regard to that, as well as conditions for county access to the site for emergency and inspection purposes. Those are just some considerations to make at this point if you all did consider approval for the project.
All right.
And so at this time, if you asked me to make a recommendation, if you all evaluated strengths and weaknesses along with the application that's before you, the presentation that you made, the comments that you heard from the public hearing, if you agree with those, then I would suggest approval. However, if you disagreed with that the applicant presented everything to meet the comprehensive plan objectives, then obviously be a vote for denial. But I think that option is completely up to you. we've given you everything to make the decision on that. I think there was another element there. I think Ms. Powell stated about, I think there's 4 things to make a decision on. The fourth element being, I think the substantial court. I didn't know if you want to state anything about that.
Sure. Well, Mr. Foster, when he gave his presentation, mentioned that the substantially in accord determination was something that the Planning Commission had to make. And I would agree with that analysis. It is a finding before the commission. Whether the commission wants to do that tonight or not, it's up to the commission. I just would like to point out, though, that if the Planning Commission does not make a finding on that, then after 60 days, it is considered to be substantially in accord with the comprehensive plan if the Planning Commission doesn't vote on it.
I couldn't understand, I'm sorry, what everything you said. It was,
Okay.
It was a little hard for me to hear.
So under state code, the substantially in accord finding, it's as Mr. Foster stated in his opening, that is a decision that the Planning Commission needs to make a finding on. And if the Planning Commission does not take that up tonight, and it doesn't make a decision within 60 days, then it's automatically, the project will be automatically deemed to be in accord with the comp plan.
So my question is, on the other projects we had, we deferred them, correct?
I don't. The
So-
Cavalier Solar was they made the finding on that one for.
The one that was deferred recently was Surry Solar Center.
Okay. And the thing is, if it's deemed in compliance, then of course the board, it still goes to the board and the board can make its finding.
Because I wasn't, I guess, aware that if we don't do anything, then, I mean, so we either need to approve the substantial in accordance determination or deny it, or and if we don't do either one of those, or if we defer it and no other action's been made in 60 days, it's
Well, I think the commission probably could defer. The question though would go to Mr. Wade about when the application was received, because since there is a conditional use permit a part of this, the commission is supposed to make a finding within 90 days, and I don't know where we are in that time, in that process. But if the applicant was okay with agreeing to an extension or a deferral past 90 days, that we could do that. Okay. Okay.
Mr. Wade, then you need to bring it back? Is that what, and if
It
you
would,
don't?
okay, so there's typically in these cases, there's a citing agreement. And typically in these citing agreements, if the board does approve it, then it finds it in substantial court and they don't need the substantial court. So, there's an element that you all don't see at the planning commission stage in the citing agreement. That's a public hearing that goes to the board supervisors at the next phase of the board supervisors. So essentially what you see that goes before the board, you see like similar to Surry Solar Center, you did not see the citing agreement that went before, because it doesn't require to go before planning commission, just goes before the board. So there's a combined package that goes to them. And so if that project is approved and the citing agreement is approved as well, it does not need the substantial court determination at the planning commission level.
You don't need that.
No, ma'am.
But tonight, if we chose to, we could say, yes, it's in accord, or no, it's not, and it would still go to the board of supervisors, and they would, that citing agreement would be what it is, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
So you could do it all tonight if you want. I think the applicant wants, I think previously the applicant did not care if you can defer it, but I think this applicant, tonight they want you to make a determination, or they do not want to defer that.
If I may, Mr. Reed, I felt it was important to include the board in the entirety of our process, and that the signing agreement speaks to the commitments that we've made to you tonight as it relates to land use. So we've elected to include this portion of the substantially in accord determination of the 2232 because that was the meat of my presentation, and I value your feedback of whether or not the combination of the things I presented before you meet that threshold.
But if we approve it, does that mean that there's no other negotiation with the Board of Supervisors? Okay, okay. So I didn't want to say something that, or do something that.
We have our attorney here, so.
I'm hoping she's.
It's a good question, though, Mr. Brock. It's, the planning commission would just provide a recommendation.
Right.
Parts of the application.
Okay. Yes, before we, I'm going to entertain a motion here, but I've got Mr. Wooden here. He's got to make a statement for.
Thank you, Chairman Brock. I just want to make a statement before the commission that I will be recusing myself from voting due to the financial support from Primacy for the school system. And as you know, I'm employed by the school system, so I will be recusing myself from voting.
Is there anybody else that needs to accuse themselves? Recuse. Right. If not, I'll entertain the Planning Commission's decision or recommendation. And this is for the comprehensive plan map amendment number 2022-02. I got any like to make a motion for, against, or
Chairman, I'd make a motion to deny comprehensive plan map amendment number 2022-02.
Second.
it's been properly moved and second that we deny the comprehensive plan amendment number 2022-02. I would ask that we need to have a comment, for denial, or so that when this is, if this is approved or not, when it goes to the Board of Supervisors, they'll have a comment or be able to see why we approved or denied it. In this case, we're denying, or the motion's for deny. Is there any additional you want to reasoning for?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
For the record, it was noted we're not approving because of, how was that stated? Who made that motion? What I'm trying to get to is the wording.
Right.
Not just the number of the comprehensive plan.
Right.
Well, how is it worded as stated in that portion of the comprehensive plan that we're stating that we are denying, or that it has been noted to deny according to comprehensive plan
Right, that's what I'm,
you tried to get to.
yes, ma'am, asking for there.
Mr. Wade, can you help us out?
So it seems to be, so keep in mind, this is the map amendment that changes the future land use from agricultural rural to industrial. And so in this case, I think you've always talked about the character. You don't think it meets the character, so that's the reason for your denial. And that would be the reason for your denial for this portion. I think you would have to look for other things as you go down from A, B, C, and D. You'd have to look for the reasonings for your recommendations. I think in this one you have to look at this is comprehensive plan map amendment. If you recommend a denial, is it for it does not meet the character for that property does not meet the character for that one, so you deny it based upon that. Is that what you were all looking for?
Mr. Seward, you made the motion, you got any?
As far as meeting the character, as far as my reason for denial, yes, sir.
Okay.
So is this, does everyone understand, I guess, the motion on the floor? And it's been second? Did somebody second it?
Mr. Behrman, second.
Mr. Behrman, second. Call for roll call.
I agree with them.
Jenkins?
He said
Ms. Cheek?
I agree with the,
Mr. Nupi?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Ms. Little?
I'm going to accuse myself as the board member.
And Mr. Wiggins says you.
Yes, abstain.
Mr. Hardy?
Deny. And can we put a stipulation on it for the comments of the community as well, too, the citizens of Surry County?
Mr. Behrman?
Yes.
Is that everyone?
Yes.
Yes, all right. The next thing we got on our list is rezoning application number 2022-02. Applicant Lapla Solar Llc seeks to rezone 2,585 acres from Agricultural Rural District AR to General District M to permit a solar unit utility use. Somebody like to make a motion for or against or defer?
I'll make a motion to deny the rezoning application number 2022-02.
Second.
I would base that on that the entire property has to be M1. The entire site, and as I understand it, they're not doing the entire site, and it's M1.
What was that? The entire what was that? Say that one more time.
My understanding, now, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's why I asked earlier, you're proposing M1 for part of the site
900.
and leaving an AR for the other part?
No. There's two parts to it. The way they're looking at it right now is if the board of supervisors approves, there's only a text amendment that they've already sent, I think, in the fall. If they approve that one, they want to keep it AR and then M1. At this time right here, if the board keeps it the way it is, then they are seeking the whole M1 zoning.
So it's just one zone now. This is all one, okay? And I
Yeah.
still deny, I would like to recommend we deny the rezoning application as, for the reason that we denied the comprehensive plan amendment, and this follows along with that.
It's been,
I second it.
it's been properly moved and second that the rezoning application 2022-02 be denied, because of the, following the comprehensive plan denial. Roll call.
Mr. Wooden?
Abstain.
Mr. Hardy?
Deny with the comments noted from the citizens of Surry County.
Mr. Behrman?
Yes.
Mr. Lunsford?
Yes.
Ms. Jenkins?
Yes.
Ms. Cheek? Yes. Mr. Newby?
Yes.
Mr. Sewitt?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Ms. Little?
Accused.
Next thing is the conditional use permit, number 2022-02, application Lapla Solar Llc seeks a conditional use for a solar generation facility in Surry County project. Well, that's it. I'd like to make a motion that we deny the conditional use permit number 2022-02 for the conditional use permit for the solar generation facility. Reasoning is that, in my opinion, it does not meet the comprehensive plan, and and that's what we have to follow, so,
Mr. Brock, could you be a little bit more specific about the comprehensive plan, the part that it does not follow?
that the project should be, placed within, proximity of a transmission line, and this does not, in my opinion, is not in proximity. I think that was the wording of wasn't it proximity of the,
Yes, sir. It was as close as possible,
well, okay, as close as possible. I don't know if I'm jumping around on you, but
So as close to existing transmission lines as possible.
yes, as close to existing transmission lines as possible. This does not meet that requirement.
Second.
Been properly moved and second that the conditional use permit number 2022-02 be denied because of not meeting the comprehensive plan. With the transmission lines being within proximity of the transmission lines. Roll call.
Ms. Cheek? Yes.
Newby,
Yes.
Mr. Stewart,
Yes.
Mr. Brock,
Yes.
Ms. Little,
Accused.
Mr. Wooden,
Abstain.
Mr. Hardy,
Yes.
Mr. Behrman,
Yes.
Mr. Lunsford,
Yes.
Ms. Jenkins.
Yes.
Okay.
Next thing is the substantially in accordance determination. Pursuant to the Virginia Code Section 15.2-2232A, applicant Lapla Solar Llc seeks a determination that this project, as defined in the Conditional Use Permit application number 2022-02, is substantially in accordance with the Surry County Comprehensive Plan for the proposal to construct and operate a solar energy facility.
I propose that we deny that they are substantially in accord determination based on the entirety of the comprehensive plan that calls out the preservation of our agriculture and forestry areas, and also location to our community towns. I feel like they did address the solar part of the plan, but I think we have to look at the entirety of our comp plan. And even though I understand the definition of substantially in coordinates, I believe we're still short of that with this project, because of where it's placed.
Second.
Been properly moved and second that we deny the substantially in accordance determination. And Mr. Wade, you'll have to read back
You can probably shorten it somehow.
in substantial, is because it's not in substantially in accordance with the Surry County Comprehensive Plan?
I think Ms. Cheek just laid it out there for, you're talking about for what she just stated for that?
Right.
Yeah, so, if I can read my own chicken scratch. The location of, proximity of agriculture and forestry, the location of the community and towns, that's what I think Ms. Cheek just brought up there.
All right, it's been properly moved in second. Roll call?
Mr. Behrman,
Yes.
Mr. Lunsford,
Yes.
Ms. Jenkins,
Yes.
Ms. Cheek,
Yes.
Mr. Newby,
Yes.
Mr. Stewart,
Yes.
Mr. Brock,
Yes.
Ms. Little,
Accused.
Mr. Wooden,
Abstain.
Mr. Hardy.
Yes.
All right. So that takes care of the new business.
Let's give it 1 second for, I guess, for a slight recess, I guess, if anybody wants to.
Right.
If anybody else wants to leave or comments or anything like that for staff or anything, but, question, I guess your case would either be on the first to the board of supervisors meeting on May 5th or the I'm just stating that, right now, it would be that, it would either be those two. I don't know which meeting the board would choose to do that, but it would be on one of those 2 days.
We've been here.
We can talk, yeah, we can talk about it, so.
We'll move around. At this
thank
point,
you.
we're having a recess right now. Recess.
Yep.
May have to go through it more than
We're gonna ask if anybody's leaving, do it quietly as possible. Next thing on our agenda is, public comments. If there are any comments from the public, I ask that you come forward. State your name and district.
Marvin Drew, Spring Grove District, and I would like to thank this board. I really appreciate you for listening to our comments. Thank you.
I'm Albert Shaw, Spring Grove District. I want to thank the board for their consideration, and also thank the member that said personally for the citizens. Thank you.
No other comments? And, committee updates, Mr. Williams?
So at this time, we are working on, we've been talking about it throughout this meeting, but we are working on our comprehensive plan update. We do have a consultant. We have been working with our comprehensive plan committee, and we're working thoroughly. I think at this time we have a couple of names. What we're doing right now, we're working on having a focus group, actually 2 focus groups, as well as have a community open house. We've identified a date at this time to have both of those events, and a community open house date at this time we're announcing publicly. It'll be April 27th. It'll be a Wednesday night, approximately from about 6 to 8 p.m. At the community center, and throughout the daytime, those people that will be invited to attend, probably approximately about 20 people at 2 different meetings, to have input in focus groups to help assist us with that plan. And then the community, we will have some surveys that will be sent out to the public on our website. And we ask that, so you as planning commissioners kind of send it out to the public. We want some input from the public to help us get our comprehensive plan amendment straight with energy projects. I know one of the major things with Surry County is solar, but it's not the only energy project that's going on in the county, and we know exactly how we're going to site these projects, and what is the community's has the community feel as though we should approach those projects. So right now we have how we should deal with solar, but one is, should that be updated to be a lot more clear and concise, and should we also draft the policy up that for our developers that come in town, so they know up front what exactly they should be looking for, and what kind of projects and what kind of sites will be appropriate up front. It does make it a lot more helpful for staff, the developer, the planning commission, and the board when we make those types of decisions. So that is one thing that I think that we will achieve at that. That's one goal that I have in mind that I hope we will achieve. I didn't know if any of our committee members, I think Mr. Newby and Ms. Cheek, they were on our subcommittee. So I don't know if you all have any questions or comments that you wanted to make. I'll be in contact with you all about the surveys that are going out. But if you all had any comments about the previous meeting that we had.
I think it was a very productive meeting to generate information as to the direction that we want to move towards. And I look forward to continue working to get in place the comprehensive plan that's best for Surry County.
Do you want to say anything, Ms. Sheik?
I agree with Mr. Newby. We had a very productive meeting. The contractor, I think, is going to help us pull together these meetings that he mentioned, because I understood, at least when I left the meeting, it was gonna be the stakeholders.
It was a stakeholders meeting with,
Meeting.
this focus group with the stakeholders. And then the community, we're gonna try to do it all in one day.
I haven't seen the schedule. My
No, you
understanding
haven't seen the
was
schedule,
gonna be a
you have not seen the schedule yet.
And I
but-
think it would be beneficial for the commission to see the schedule of events.
And that,
If we're able to put that together.
so, yeah, as soon as we get some things out, we'll work with you all first, and then send it to the rest of the committee once we finalize some things and look at some questions to ask the community. But that's something that we're gearing upon. They can, I have my next call with the consultant is, next Wednesday. And in which case they'll kind of send some questions out, and we'll work with you all on those questions. But it's pretty incumbent to have those questions out to the community. We'll have them out to the community for probably at least 6 weeks or so to the community. So once those questions are out, we look for you all to be an advocate, to push those questions out to get some feedback. But typically it will be online.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Wade? If here none, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved to the 25th of April.
Second.
Proper move second that we adjourn to the 25th of April. One other thing, don't forget your time sheets. Get that big check. And all those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? I don't know who wants to spend the night, but thank you all for coming. Thank the public.
I think it's got to tell me that.